Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of what if Deku's secret wing Quirk manifests during his Swan dive? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. I know a way you can still be a hero. Pray for a quirk in your next life and take a swan dive off the roof. But I have a quirk, Izuku whispered to himself, standing on the roof of a tall building. Can a quirkless person be a hero like you? No. All Might had left him on this roof. Bakugo told him to jump off a roof. Izuku looked up at the sky and let his tears fall. He wanted to jump, he really did, but it wouldn't do anything. His wings always came out when he fell. He would know he's fallen 5 times. The first time was when he was 7. Bakugo had pushed him down a hill in the forest they used to play in, and Izuku had tumbled down into the river. He had to walk home covered in cuts and bruises, with mud caked all over him. When his mom had seen him, she had been concerned, but then she noticed that there was something odd about his eyes. His pupils were a lot bigger than normal. Izuku had been excited at first. His quirk had come in. He wasn't quirkless after all. That was where the excitement ended, though. His quirk wasn't like his mother's. It wasn't like his father's either. It was like the man she had gone home with one night while her husband was on a business trip. Inko pushed her son out of the window, only to have him sprout wings and glide safely to the ground. Once he had safely landed, the beautiful white and gray wings disappeared back to where they had come from, leaving not a mark to show they were ever there. The second time, 3 months later, was a lot like the first, only that time was when his father threw him off a bridge. That was the last time he had seen his father. The third time was when Izuku was 10. He had a broken arm from his mother's beatings, and he had burns all over his back from Bakugo's explosions, and Izuku just wanted the pain to end. He hadn't figured out how to make his wings come out on command, so maybe the first 2 times had been flukes. Spoiler, they weren't. He glided gently back to ground. The 4th and 5th times were both more experiments than suicide attempts. He wanted to try to gain some control of his wings. He had managed to control the other aspects of his quirk to some extent, but those wings, the one part that was obvious, stubbornly refused to cooperate. At least until that 5th attempt. Looking down from the darkening sky, Izuku watched as the city lights all came on, and his eyes switched over from what he called day vision to night vision, and the world was as bright as if the sun was still up. "You're a quirkless freak. Do you hear me?" His mother's voice taunted him from his thoughts. "I don't care about the truth. You tell everyone you're quirkless. Do you hear me?" "I love my quirk," Izuku muttered to himself as he extended his talons to admire them. They extended 3 inches from his fingers and were razor sharp. Izuku had been standing on the rooftop for hours now. It had been daytime still when All Might had left him here, and now it was fully dark. At a noise to his left, Izuku looked over and let his keen hearing guide his eyes to where the dark-clothed hero with a long white scarf was making his way to where he was, no doubt to try to prevent him from jumping. He spread his wings and took off before the man got close enough to make out any details about him. Shoyuta paused when he saw the boy sprout wings and fly off, recognizing those wings, even if he didn't recognize the rest of the boy. Screech was a vigilante in the area with an owl quirk. The boy was able to move silently, not even a rustle of the feathers to give away his movements, and Shoyuta knew he could see perfectly in the dark and could hear him from several rooftops away, as he just proved. Shoyuta had also seen the kind of damage the boy's claws, talons, could do. But the most powerful part of the boy's quirk came when he stopped being silent. He had a screech that could rival that of his husband, present Mike. Looking at the boy's retreating figure in the sky, Shoyuta couldn't help but notice just how young the boy really looked. That looked like a middle school uniform, but it was too dark to make out any details about it. It could be from any of the schools in the city. Shoyuta pulled out his phone and placed a call to Detective Tsukachi Naomasa. "Eraser, what can I do for you?" the detective answered. "I just spotted Screech," Shoyuta said. "He's younger than we thought." "Oh." Shoyuta could hear the detective grabbing a notebook. "What makes you say that?" "He was in a middle school uniform. Couldn't tell which school though. Looked like he was about to jump off a roof, But when he saw me or heard me more like, he just flew off instead. Tsukachi was silent for a minute. You're telling me that Screech, the vigilante we've been after for 3 years, is a middle school kid? He was most likely in elementary school when he started, Shoyuta confirmed. I was really hoping he was just small. Both men were silent. Now what? I don't want to arrest a kid. Same. I'll try to talk to him next time I see him, Shoyuta offered. Maybe see about convincing him to enter a hero school. You'd want Screech as your student? Tsukachi teased. There must be a reason he does what he does, and he's got great potential. I was always trying to convince him to enter a reform program aimed at getting a valid hero license. Izuku shed his school uniform and pulled out his vigilante gear. It wasn't really gear, honestly. It was a dark gray hoodie, black beanie, black face mask, black jeans, and black boots with gray laces. There were holes in the back of the hoodie for his wings, and he always made sure his hair was completely covered by the beanie. As he was looking at his gear, he thought back to how Eraserhead had seen him on the roof. Maybe tonight wasn't a great night to go out. Maybe he should take the night and just what? Reflect more on Bakugu's callous words? If he reflected on this shitstorm his life had turned to, he might abandon the thought of jumping and just take a bath with the toaster instead. Angrily pulling on his gear and wiping away his tears, Izuku opened his window and crawled onto his fire escape. He jumped off the fire escape and took off, relishing the feeling of the wind in his feathers. He loved being avian. The freedom of flight was intoxicating, and Izuku couldn't imagine not being able to fly. The best part was, the night sky was his, and his alone. Hawks had tried to catch him once. Only once. All it took was a well-timed screech to disorient the red-winged hero, and Izuku was able to slip away to the ground to hide. As sharp as the hero's hearing was, Izuku was an owl. No one would be able to hear him if he didn't want to be heard, and he had already blasted Hawk's hearing. His ears would be ringing for hours. He never tried to catch him again, even though he had seen him a few times since. Hawk still tried to talk to him, but never to catch him. A sudden sound from below caught Izuku's attention and he flew down, looking to stop whatever altercation was in progress, only to find Eraserhead was already taking care of it. Izuku still perched on the rooftop, wings slightly spread out as he watched the hero work. He'd be the first to admit that the hero was his favorite. He was quick and efficient in all his takedowns, and he fought quirkless. What more could you ask for in a hero? Izuku wanted to be an underground hero like Eraserhead, but he'd never be able to now, not since being a vigilante. He was about to leave when Eraserhead looked up and saw him. Wide-eyed he said, "Screech. Wait, before you leave, can I talk to you?" Izuku had spread his wings in anticipation of takeoff, but at the hero's words he relaxed his wings slightly, still ready to take off if he didn't like the direction of the conversation, but willing to listen. He chirped to let the hero know he was listening. With a sigh of relief, Eraserhead said, "I want this to be in private. Do you think you can wait up there for me to get this guy?" He nudged the leg of the criminal tied up on the ground with his boot, handed over to the police. "Shouldn't take too long." Izuku studied the hero for a few moments and then hooted in affirmation and walked to the center of the roof, away from prying eyes to wait. 10 minutes later, after the criminal had been handed over, Eraserhead showed up on the roof with Izuku. The teen crouched down, ready for a quick takeoff, but waiting to hear out Eraserhead. He tilted his head and chirped inquisitively. "I know you're a kid," he started. "I saw you earlier today in a middle school uniform. I couldn't tell which school, but that was you, wasn't it?" Izuku nodded slightly and gave a questioning chirp. With the confirmation, Eraserhead continued, "If you're in middle school, then that means the only reason you don't have a license is because you're too young. We can always claim you were never told the proper laws surrounding vigilantism. If you were to apply to a hero school, I'm sure you would be able to get in. You not only have a lot of potential, but I've also seen you in action. You have what it takes." Izuku stared at him for a few moments and thought. He did want to go to UA. Of course he did. He'd always wanted to go to UA. And to show off his quirk? That would be wonderful. To have people see and know that he had a quirk, that he had an amazing quirk. He was a pretty bird. He wanted to flaunt his feathers, just like all male birds wanted to do. But he was supposed to be quirkless. His mother said so. His mother forced him to say so. If he threw off all those years of lying, of being conditioned to act weak and quirkless, then what? There's no way his mother would let him come home. Screech, kid, look, I'm sure there's a reason you do what you do, Eraserhead said after it had been a few minutes without a reply. I've found that most people who turn to vigilantism don't have the best home lives. If this is true with you, please let me know and I will do anything in my power to help you. If you are in a bad situation, I can help get you out. You just need to tell me. Izuku was still quiet, contemplating his words. He wanted to get out. He was so tired of the way his life was currently going. Tired of the constant self-depreciating thoughts, the suicidal thoughts, the little voice in the back of his head that kept telling him he was a useless, worthless, quirkless Deku. He was tired of being unwanted, unloved. Could that really change? Could Eraserhead really help with any of that? Only one way to find out, Izuku thought to himself. Taking a deep breath, he said, Izuku. My name is Midoriya Izuku. Izuku stood up from his takeoff pose and retracted his wings. If he was going to trust this hero with his name, he might as well trust him all the way. How old are you? Eraserhead asked him. 15, came the quiet reply. So, you're in your last year of middle school, right? At his nod, Eraserhead continued, which high schools are you applying to? I'm sure you could get into UA if you wanted. Izuku laughed softly. I am applying for UA, but I am going to do it quirkless, so I doubt I'll pass. Quirkless? Why? He asked with a quirked eyebrow. That would be due to your correct theory of my bad home life, Izuku muttered. Mom tells everyone I'm quirkless, I'm registered as quirkless, I'm supposed to be quirkless. Extra toe joint and everything. Of course, you have the extra toe joint, Eraserhead said, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. Avians have that joint, something along the lines of the feet trying to be talons, I think? I'm not too sure on that, since no avian I've ever met had talons as their feet, though. Izuku's eyes widened at that. You mean that X-ray that ruined my life was wrong? I lost my best friend because some doctors saw my extra toe joint and said, quirkless, instead of, maybe this kid is avian? I spent 3 years thinking I would be better off dead because of this, and Izuku stopped himself. He was starting to get loud. Any further and his screech would activate. He took a deep breath to calm himself and looked back at the hero in front of him. I'm sorry, I have to go. With that, Izuku spread his wings and took off into the night. Please, Tsukachi answered the phone. Tell me you talked to Screech? Yeah, Shoyuta replied. He's 15, going to be taking the UA entrance exam in 3 weeks, and his name is Midoriya Izuku. Oh, and he's registered as quirkless. Tsukachi was typing at his computer but paused at that. Quirkless? What? Has no one noticed his wings? Turns out they're retractable. We were talking and they just disappeared. Shoyuta said disbelievingly. I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't seen it. His quirk seems to be a mix of transformative and emitter with that screech of his, which I think he almost used on accident during our conversation. What did you talk about? The detective asked. Apparently, he was diagnosed quirkless at 4 because of a doctor visit that showed he had the avian's extra toe joint. He was really upset about that, didn't realize that was an avian trait. I have a feeling that his parents don't like his quirk. His mom is forcing him to pretend to be quirkless. Tsukachi continued his typing for a few minutes and then said, Okay, Midoriya Izuku. Mother is Midoriya Inko. Quirk, attract small objects. It's a weak telekinesis quirk. Father is Midoriya Hisashi. Quirk, fire breath. He can breathe fire. If the kid is avian, and the mom is refusing to acknowledge her kid's quirk, there's a chance the father isn't the father. He let out a tired sigh. Gods, can you imagine putting your kid through the torture that is today's treatment of the quirkless just because of an affair? Shoyuta looked back to where Screech had flown off from and said, I'm going to have to talk to Zashi, but when I get this kid to turn himself in, I want first dibs on him. I'm going to get the guest room ready for him. Tsukachi laughed at him. Careful, there, Eraser, you don't want to ruin your reputation, do you? Izuku was perched on the ledge of the tallest building in the city, crying. While he did love heights, right now he just wanted to be away from everyone, away from prying eyes. Away from pesky red-winged heroes who couldn't take a freaking hint. Izuku's wings were fluffed out threateningly, and he was making a slight territorial hiss that he knew the other could hear, since he paused in his advancements every time he hissed. Finally, Izuku spoke. "Leave me alone, or I'll screech at you again." He turned his head to glare at Hawks, who had stopped and crouched down with his wings spread, ready to take off in chase. "I just want to talk, baby bird," Hawks said in his most non-threatening tone. "It looks like you might be having a hard day." Izuku roughly rubbed away his tears and let out an angry laugh. "Rough day, yeah, you can say that. I'm willing to listen if you want to get it off your chest," the hero offered. Izuku looked at him with narrowed eyes, then he sighed and relaxed his wings. "Fine," he whispered. "I already told Eraserhead my name, so it's only a matter of time before someone shows up at my home. Are you okay, baby bird?" Hawks came to sit next to Izuku, who decided to sit as well from his crouch. "No," Izuku retracted his wings, causing Hawks to let out a slight squawk of surprise. "Tell me, do you have an extra toe joint?" Yeah, all avians do." "Don't you?" came Hawks' confused reply. "I was told I was quirkless at 4 because of it," Izuku said softly. "My parents weren't happy, but it was what it was. Small parts of my quirk started emerging when I was 7. And then my mom pushed me out the window." Hawks gasped in surprise. "Were you okay?" "That was the first time my wings emerged. I think my quirk was taking my fall as an attempt at branching," Izuku recalled. And thinking back on it, that probably was why he couldn't control his wings at first. He had to learn to fly, and raptors, such as owls, learned by falling from their nests in a method called branching. Their parents would kick them out and they would have to use their wings to fall safely. "How? How many times did you fall?" Hawks hesitated in asking. He had figured it out. Clever bird. 5 times, all before I was 11. 3 by my own will. Hawks closed his eyes with a wince. "Is that why you're a vigilante now?" he asked with a whisper. "You're trying to die?" With a sad grin, Izuku nodded. "I might as well try to take some thugs down with me, and who knows? One of them might get lucky." Hawks was quiet for a moment. "I'm going to hug you now, and I need you to not fight me on this." Izuku raised an eyebrow at him, but let the older bird put his arm across his shoulder and pull him in for a hug. He wrapped his wings around the teen by his side, and that was all it took. Izuku let out all the tears he had left, clinging to Hawk's jacket, and burying his face in the older man's chest. They stayed like that for what seemed like hours. "What happened today? What happened to make you break down like this?" Hawks whispered his question. "Today was just a day," Izuku said, his voice hoarse from his breakdown. "It started in the morning. I didn't bother turning on any lights in the house when I woke up for school. And why would I? I have perfect dark vision. But my mom walked in the kitchen and saw my eyes when she turned on the lights. I have a few new bruises from that." "Next," Izuku continued, "one of the kids in my class left spider lilies on my desk. It's not the first time that's happened, but it still hurts every time. I like to write quirk analysis, and after school, one of my bullies destroyed it and threw it out the window. I had worked really hard on that one, and as he was walking out the classroom, he said," Izuku paused at that. "If he told Hawks what Bakugo had said, he'd be required to report it. Bakugo would lose his chance to be a hero." No, Izuku didn't want to do that to him. "Well, it doesn't matter what he said." "I have a feeling it does matter," Hawks said quietly. "But I won't push you to tell me if you don't want to." "Thanks." Izuku sniffled a little and then continued. "On my way home, I ran into a villain. He was all made of sludge, and I was just so depressed I didn't even bother dodging when he attacked me. I didn't fight him. I was willing to let it all end." "Kid." "Yeah, the only reason I'm still alive is because All Might showed up and blasted the villain. He collected the villain into a bottle, but before he could leave, I tried to ask him a question. I'm so small and light that I don't think he felt me latch onto him before he took off. He landed on a roof. I asked him a question. He gave me an answer. Then he left. If I didn't know my wings would prevent me from falling, I would have jumped." Hawks was rubbing Izuku's back comfortingly. And oh, how Izuku needed this. He needed one person to care. or even one person to pretend to care. I'm not sure how long I stayed there, Izuku continued. Eraserhead was out and saw me by the time I flew off. Please tell me Eraser didn't hurt you too, Hawks begged him. Not intentionally, no. But something he said is what was the final straw for me tonight. Looking up at Hawks with a weak grin, Izuku said, I never knew that avians had an extra toe joint before tonight. I had thought that my quirk may have been stress-induced, from my friend, pushing me down a hill. The two sat there in silence for hours and were still there when the sun started coming up. Kigo watched as the baby bird flew off home, likely to get ready for his day at school. He wanted to take the baby bird home with him, but he was probably the worst person to be a parent. A kick butt big brother? But not as the baby bird's parent. Picking up his phone, Kigo scrolled through his contacts, hoping he had the number for Eraserhead, or if he was going to have to reach out to someone for it. When he found the name in his contacts, he cheered and hit call. And waited. And waited. And was sent to voicemail. Frowning, he tried again. 3 rings later, the phone was answered. What? Came the sleep-deprived growling shout of Eraserhead. Whoa, okay, ease back there, you're at a 12, and I'm gonna need you to bring it back to at least a 7, Kigo joked. Who in the F? There was a pause, no doubt as Eraserhead looked at the name of the person calling, since his next words were, Hawks, if you don't have a damn good reason to be calling me at the butt crack of dawn, I am going to rip all your feather off and shove them up your butt. Graphic. Noted. Don't call Eraserhead before noon. Kigo laughed a little and then got serious and said, I spent most of the past few hours with Screech crying on my shoulder. He told me he met you tonight and that you know his name now. Kigo heard Eraserhead sit up and get serious as well. Yeah, Midoriya Izuku. Seems his mother had an affair and the kid came from that. She most likely blames him for a failed marriage. We saw she was divorced. She abuses him, Kigo said. He told me so. I know. I'm working with Detective Tsukachi. As soon as we can get Screech to turn himself in, we don't want to arrest him. I'm going to become his emergency foster parent and then I'm going to file for adoption. That kid is mine. Kigo could hear the near-possessive challenge coming from Eraser and Kigo laughed. Chill, dude, you can have him. I'm not even going to attempt to be a parental figure. But you're gonna have to live with the fact I'm Big Brother Hawks. A slight pause and then, acceptable. Izuku managed to get back into his room with an hour to spare before he had to leave for school. Quickly shedding his gear, Izuku pulled on his night clothes for the short walk to the bathroom. He could hear his mother in the kitchen and didn't want to risk her seeing him in either his vigilante gear or without a shirt. He took a short shower, ensuring that all traces of the tears he had cried were truly gone, and that his curls were no longer flattened by his beanie, hair was terrible, and then went back to his room to put on his uniform. He wondered how long it would be before the police showed up. Izuku opened his door and listened for his mother. He hadn't heard anything from her since his shower, but that could either mean she was waiting for him, or that she already left for work. He turned all his focus on his hearing and was only able to pick up on the heartbeats of the neighbors, so he released his focus and relaxed. His mother was already gone. He went to the kitchen and made himself a quick breakfast and packed a sandwich for lunch, hoping he'll be able to eat it this time, and then got his shoes on and left for school. Walking down the street, Izuku noticed a man leaning against a car with a tan trench coat and a tan hat. Detective Tsukachi. He noticed the second the detective recognized Izuku, letting him know that Eraserhead had indeed reported his name. Heaving a sigh of resignation, Izuku continued his walk to school. Either the detective was going to walk with him or stop him, but Izuku wasn't going to acknowledge him first. Midoriya, the detective said as Izuku was passing him. Can I have a few words? I'm on my way to school, he replied quietly. Can we walk and talk? Of course, the detective agreed. I just wanted to say a few things in any case. Just so you know, neither Eraserhead nor myself want to arrest you. We want to see you make it into a hero school like UA and become a licensed hero. On that front, since we have now had this conversation, I expect you to stop all vigilante activities. That is going to be the driving force of if you will be able to get your license. Why is that? Izuku asked. I thought that. After having vigilantism on my record, I'd be permanently barred from ever getting my license. We are going with the plausible excuse that no one ever told you that was illegal, and that you were too young to have your license. But now you have been told, and I won't be able to claim otherwise. Izuku nodded that he understood. Second, we would like for you to turn yourself in, sooner rather than later, so we can start an official investigation into your mother for child abuse. You would then be placed with a temporary foster family, and Eraserhead has already volunteered for your placement. Wide-eyed, Izuku could only gape at the detective for a moment before his brain restarted and he was capable of speech again. What about his husband and son? Will they be okay with him taking in another kid? How Detective Tsukachi stammered. How did you know about them? Eraserhead is my favorite hero, Izuku shrugged. I like to follow him, watch him work. Sometimes he gets calls from them. Looking at the detective quickly, he continued. I'm an owl, detective. I can hear a whisper from 20 meters, and Present Mike does not know how to whisper. Laughing, he said, no, he does not. I'll have to let Eraser know, but as for them, I'm sure they won't mind. Mike had used his emergency foster license a few times without consulting Eraser before, and their son was originally an emergency foster himself. He won't be upset that you're receiving help. Izuku nodded. When do I need to turn myself in by? Preferably as soon as possible. I'm willing to take you in now, but if you would rather it be later, I can give you my number so you can come in on your own time. He handed Izuku his card. Just remember, no vigilante work. Izuku paused before asking, will this mean I can't fly anymore? If I turn myself in? It would mean no more unsupervised flights, yes. However, Hawks has also offered to take on a big brother role, so I'm sure you could get him to supervise some flights. And when you get into UA, you will of course be able to fly in training. You're assuming I'll be able to make it in while fighting Quirkless? Izuku pointed out. I'm sure Eraserhead told you I'm registered as Quirkless. Yes, he did, and I verified it when looking you up, he confirmed. However, if you are fostered early enough, you can have your registration corrected and your UA application updated. With your mother out of the picture and your registration corrected, there would be no need for you to pretend to be Quirkless. Izuku let out a quiet, yet excited chirp before looking around nervously for anyone who may have heard him. Seeing no one, he relaxed and said, that would be nice. It's really hard, sometimes, to keep all of my traits suppressed. As you just heard. Izuku laughed sadly. Chirps, hoots, and hisses come so naturally. They walked in silence for a few more minutes before Izuku stopped abruptly. Ahead of them, at the school gates, Izuku could see Bakugo standing there, glaring at Izuku, ready for the day's first beating. Even from this far away, Izuku could hear the hate-filled growl of Deku. Okay, he whispered. With a confused eyebrow raised, the detective asked, okay? Yeah, Izuku answered, still quiet. I am not really interested in seeing any of the bullies today, and from what you're saying, I can probably skip school if I go with you. Well, yes, it would be difficult to attend classes if you're at the police station. The detective looked back at the school gates and saw a few students but was too far away to make out any details. Owl vision must be really good to be able to make out who everyone was. He couldn't even make out any features besides hair color. Izuku turned around and started walking back the way they had come, assuming the detective had been leaning against his own car. Name, Midoriya Izuku. Quirk, Screechall. Type, Avian Transformative with Emitter Aspects. Attributes, Retractable Wings and Talons, Enhanced Hearing, Enhanced and Nocturnal Vision, Enhanced Voice. Izuku looked at his new ID card with his updated Quirk registration and grinned. He was finally registered. He didn't need to hide anymore. With luck, maybe the bullies would leave him alone. Well, Bakugo probably wouldn't, but the teachers might not turn a blind eye as much now? Maybe? Detective, I have a question for you. At the answering nod, Izuku continued. If a bully tries to attack me with their quirk, am I allowed to defend myself? You get attacked with quirks at school? He asked alarmed. Well, yeah, no one cares about the quirkless kid, so teachers have always let the quirked kids do whatever they wanted to me. Now that I'm registered, though, they might stop most of the bullies, but I'm sure one or two will still keep going. Izuku paused to glance up at the detective. I just want to know if I can defend myself, or if it will count against me if I turn a screech on them. You do realize that your screech is really powerful, right? He confirmed. At the assenting chirp, he continued. Maybe try flying away? One of them can fly, though, Izuku countered, thinking of how Bakugo was able to use his explosions that way. He'd only seen it in person once, but he was sure that had been something that the boy had been practicing. I promise it wouldn't be a full-powered screech? Maybe we should see about transferring you to another school. Why bother? There's only 2 months before graduation, and then I'll be in high school, Izuku countered. With a sigh of defeat, Detective Tsukachi relented. If a bully is about to use their quirk on you, you can defend yourself. I know what the damage from a full-powered screech looks like, so if I'm called in I better not see that. With a soft smile, Izuku said, No, you don't. What was that? He asked. You said you know what the damage from a full-powered screech looks like. And no, you don't. I have always held back. Think I'm close to present mic levels? The main difference is that for him it's his entire voice, while I can really only screech. That sounds terrifying, he admitted. No wonder Eraser is always telling me your screech is the most powerful aspect of your quirk. I promise not to cause any property damage when I defend myself. The two of them had arrived back at the detective's office at the station and entered, to find Eraserhead sleeping on the couch. Oi, Eraser, this is an office, not a hotel. Wake up. Detective Tsukachi said. With a yawn, the hero got up and looked at Izuku properly for the first time. Oh, I didn't expect you to be so green. You're starting your own rainbow at home, the detective joked. At Izuku's curious glance, he clarified. His husband is yellow, his son is purple, and now you're green. All he needs now is a red kid, an orange one, and a blue one. Nem and Tensei are close enough to the blue part to count, and Hawks has already inserted himself into the family, so red is covered, Eraser grumbled. And I'm not trying to recreate a rainbow. I'm just trying to help kids. Speaking of, are you ready to head out? Zashi's eager to meet you. He and Toshi are making a welcome home dinner for you. After a quick stop at his old place to get some clothes and whatever he would need for school for the last 2 months, Shoyuta and Izuku got to Shuta's apartment. Izuku stopped a little bit away from the door and stared at it apprehensively. What's up, kid? Shoyuta asked. What if they don't like me? Izuku whispered. The detective said they would, but what if they don't? Shoyuta couldn't imagine Hisashi not liking him, but it was an admittedly real fear that Hitoshi might not like him. His son wasn't very social and took a lot to warm up to new people. He wouldn't be upset about a new person in the home. They've had new kids come through since they've adopted Hitoshi, but he never liked them on a personal level. Just be yourself, Shoyuta advised. Zashi would love a rock that came to live with us so long as there were no bugs, so you don't need to worry about him. Hitoshi might not like you at first, though, but that's just who he is. Keep an open mind, and I'm sure he'll warm up sooner or later. Shoyuta ruffled the kid's hair. Now let's go in. I'm hungry and I doubt Tsukachi fed you anything good. At the kid's nod, Shoyuta opened the door and they entered the apartment. We're home, he called out. Hisashi welcomed them with a smile. Welcome home, Sho. And hello, new little listener. I'm Yamada Hisashi. It's great to meet you. Timidly, Izuku said, Hello. I'm Midoriya Izuku. It's nice to meet you as well, present mic sir. You know who I am. That's adorable. You're one of my favorite heroes, Izuku admitted with a blush. You're the only other person I've ever heard of with a damaging voice quirk. You have a voice quirk, listener? That's great. Hisashi was not holding back on the huge sunshine smile he was giving off, and Shoyuta was squinting at the sheer brightness. Well, not really, but it is an aspect of my quirk. I'm an owl, a screech owl specifically. Hisashi gasped. Are you Screech? Oh my goodness, Shoyuta. You didn't tell me our new baby was going to be SSH. So, Izuku had come to a few conclusions by the time he had finally gone to bed that night. First, Present Mike was a high-energy, warm, loving person who gave the best hugs and wanted Izuku to call him Hisashi. Second, Eraserhead, who Hisashi insisted he call Shoyuta, was a calm, observant, cool balance to Hisashi, but was no less loving. He didn't give hugs outright, but he'd sit next to Izuku and play with his hair. It was a slight resemblance to how Izuku would preen his feathers when he was having a really rough day, and it helped calm him down. Third, Hitoshi really didn't like him. At least, it seemed he didn't like him. He kept staring at Izuku with narrowed eyes. He'd glare at him and then turn away when Izuku was about to ask him if there was anything he did wrong. Izuku wanted to be friends, or at least not enemies, but he really thought Hitoshi hated him. Even though Shoyuta said the boy would be fine sharing the house with another kid, Izuku didn't think that was the case. Just like everyone else, he hates you. You're intruding on his life. Shut up, Izuku thought to himself. Just because a few people are being nice to you now doesn't mean it'll last. So, it's going to be one of those nights? Izuku rolled over in his bed and stared at the wall. Tomorrow he would be going back to school, and he'd have to explain to his classmates that he had a quirk. They wouldn't believe him, he knew it, so he'd have to show them. Maybe his wings? Or talents? Doesn't matter what you show them, they'll still hate you. Maybe they'll kill you this time? Why wait for them to do it? Izuku squeezed his eyes shut, trying to pry the thoughts out of his head, but when that didn't work, he decided maybe sleep wasn't going to happen. Besides, it's not like he was ever really able to sleep at night anyways. He got out of bed and grabbed some of his books from his backpack. If he was going to be up, he might as well try to finish the next chapter in his math book, and get a head start on the next chapter for history. The desk in his room wasn't big enough for how Izuku liked to spread out while studying, so he decided to take his things into the front room and study on the coffee table. Nearly an hour later, Izuku heard a noise from down the hall. It seemed as though someone was awake. Izuku kept quiet, hoping whoever it was wouldn't notice him. His mother always hated it when she saw him acting like an owl in the dark, and Izuku hadn't bothered turning on a light when he came out to the front room. Whoever it was went to the bathroom. It must have been Hitoshi, since Hisashi and Shoyuta had a bathroom in their room. Izuku continued to be silent, hunching into himself and hoping he would go back to bed without ever noticing him. No such luck, it would seem. Hitoshi came to the front room and turned on the light. When he saw Izuku on the floor, doing schoolwork, he just blinked. Hi," Izuku whispered as he let his eyes transition from dark vision to light vision. "What are you doing out here this late?" Hitoshi asked him quietly, not wanting to risk waking up his parents. "I couldn't sleep," Izuku shrugged. "It's actually rare for me to sleep at night." "Because you're an owl," he stated. Izuku nodded. Why are you up?" "Insomnia," was the simple reply. "Dad makes me stay in my room and at least try to sleep until 3 a.m. If I still can't sleep then, I can come out and watch TV or get a head start on the day, or whatever else to occupy myself. I used to go flying," Izuku says mournfully. "But I'm not allowed to do that without supervision anymore." With a sad sigh, Izuku started packing up his textbooks to go back to his room. "Where are you going?" Hitoshi asked. "Back to my room?" Izuku tilted his head to the side. "You're going to be out here, right? I know you don't like me, so I don't want to be in your way." Izuku finished getting his things cleared up and got up. "I hope the rest of your night is pleasant." Hitoshi wasn't sure where he messed up, but the new kid thought he didn't like him? But he does like him. He's adorable. The way he would softly hoot when Dad played with his hair was so cute he couldn't help but stare, and when Papa hugged him, he would let out these adorable little chirps. Hitoshi was a bit excited when he came out and saw him out here. He thought they could talk about their mutual dislike of sleep, but apparently Hitoshi had scared the little owl off. Dimmen his resting beach face. And Dad probably warned him he wouldn't like him right away. Which, to be fair to Dad, was not normally a lie. Hitoshi didn't like many people. They would always treat him like a villain as soon as they heard about his quirk, and that was the main reason why he was still his parents' only adopted kid. He knew Papa wanted another kid, but he wasn't going to adopt a kid that couldn't accept Hitoshi. Hitoshi decided he'll try to make it up to the little owl by making a nice breakfast for everyone. He took out his phone and started looking for a video about owls. Maybe he could get some inspiration for breakfast? A few minutes later and he was sekidi into the video. Who knew owls were so damn cute? They were sky kittens. And the screech owl was so tiny. No wonder the new kid was small. Hitoshi was so absorbed into the video, he didn't notice the small owl boy had come back out of his room to watch him. Izuku let out a small, barely audible hoot. Hitoshi looked up sharply. "I didn't hear you come in," he said. "I know." Izuku had a sharp glint to his eyes. "No one hears me unless I want to be heard. Even Eraserhead almost never knew when I was near." "That's right, you're a vigilante," Hitoshi remembered. Was he corrected? "If I want a chance at getting a valid hero license, I have to stop my vigilantism." Izuku looked down and quietly said, "I'm sorry, I thought you didn't like me because—" "No, don't be sorry, I always look set off." Hitoshi rubbed the back of his neck. It seems he may have been thinking out loud earlier. So embarrassing. "Oh." Izuku came more fully into the room and sat down next to Hitoshi. "What are you watching?" Izuku really didn't want to go to school today, but he had already skipped yesterday to go with Detective Tsukachi to the police station. He couldn't skip again. Shoyuta had agreed to take him to school today. He needed to update the school's information regarding Izuku anyways, so it wasn't likely that any of the other students would risk attacking him on sight. "Bakugo will just kill you at lunch. You ready to go?" Shuta's steady voice pulled Izuku out of his thoughts, and he nodded. "Okay, let's go." Hizashi and Hitoshi had already left, so they locked the door and started on their way. 20 minutes later they were walking through the gates to Aldera Middle School. Shoyuta walked with him into the front office, where the secretary gave them a brief glance and then promptly ignored them. "Excuse me, I'm here to update some information for Midoriya Izuku," Shoyuta said. Izuku knew that they weren't going to treat him well. He had warned Shoyuta on the way here that this would happen, and then spent the rest of the walk to school trying to convince him not to pull him out of school for the last 2 months. "Sure," the secretary muttered, annoyed. "What do you want to update?" "His guardian and his quirk status." The secretary looked up sharply at that. "Quirk status? He's quirkless though. That's what needs to be updated." "He's not quirkless." Turning to Izuku, Shoyuta asked, "Do you want to show her? Or just get your information updated?" Izuku chirped a negative, so Shoyuta continued. "Is there a form for me to fill out?" The secretary was looking at Izuku suspiciously. Just because the boy can chirp like a bird doesn't give him a quirk. "No," Shoyuta retorted. "The fact he has a quirk is what gives him a quirk. Now, do you have a form or not?" She gave him the form to update his information, but continued to glare at Izuku, who was pointedly staring at the floor. She barely looked up as Shoyuta gave her the updated information. "Screech owl?" she asked in disbelief after glancing at the form. "Why yes," Izuku stuttered. "Prove it," she hissed. "Bird quirks are rare, and there's nothing about you that is bird." She cut herself off with a squeak when Izuku let his eyes switch to dark vision for a moment. When he did that, his pupil got so big the green of his irises all but vanished, becoming a thin ring. It was fairly obvious. He quickly let his eyes go back to light vision, since it was bright, and that much light hurt his eyes in dark mode. You really do have a quirk?" she whispered. At Izuku's nod, her entire demeanor changed, and she became far more professional, asking for Shuta's identification to prove he was who he said, and if he had any documentation to prove he was Izuku's new guardian. After all information had been entered and updated, Shoyuta turned to Izuku. "You're going to be okay getting back home, right? Or do you want me or Zashi to come pick you up?" Izuku smiled softly. "Thanks, but I should be okay. I have the address saved, and if I get lost I can just text you." Izuku's smile turned slightly mischievous. "If all else fails, I can just fly home. The city is a bit more familiar from above." "Smartass," Shoyuta playfully ruffles Izuku's hair. "I'll see you after school then." Izuku walked into class and tried to ignore the eyes that followed him as he handed his late pass to the teacher and went to his desk. For once, there were no flowers. Probably because they want to make sure you get them. "Midoriya, why were you late?" the teacher asks, not even looking at the late pass, crumpling it up and throwing it in the trash. The passes said why," he stuttered. "Tell the class," the teacher insisted. "I think we'd all like to hear it from you." Izuku sighed as the students all smirked and snickered at him. I was late because my new guardian H had to update my information. What information? Izuku took a deep breath and said, my quirk status. I'm not quirkless. The response was instantaneous. The entire class was in an uproar as the teacher desperately pulled the note out of the trash to read what it said to confirm Izuku's words, but all he heard was Bakugo's rage-filled, "What the F, Deku?" He had jumped out of his desk to grab Izuku by the collar and slammed him into the ground. You're a quirkless little sheet. There's no way you just suddenly got a quirk overnight. You've always been quirkless. Nothing's changed. Let me go, Bakugo. I do have a quirk. Izuku hated it when Bakugo grabbed him like this. It would be so easy for Izuku to lose control of his screech and blast him in the face. At this close of a range, he could do serious damage to his ex-friend. Bakugo, the teacher said sharply. Release Midoriya and return to your seat. With a growl, Bakugo let him up. Get ready, Deku, you're going to die at lunch for lying. Frustrated, Izuku yelled back, I'm not lying, and he spread his wings. Izuku quietly ate his lunch. He was sitting on the roof of the school, barely managing to escape from the horde of students who suddenly wanted to be his friends since he has a quirk. And not just any quirk. No, he's got an avian quirk. Those are cool, flashy, rare. Heroic. I'm the same person today that I was yesterday, he thought to himself. They didn't like me on Monday, they shouldn't suddenly like me on Wednesday. They still don't like you. They still hate you. I know, he answered himself. They'll be leaving flowers on your desk again by Friday. I know, he repeated. Thinking back on how he revealed his quirk, he probably could have done it a bit better, but Bakugo had frustrated him and threatened him. Now that Izuku was able to tell people about his quirk, he was in a different league than most of the others. His quirk really was amazing, and that wasn't just him being a proud little bird. He had range with his screech. He could fly. He could hear and see way better than a regular person. And he had close combat abilities with his talons. He could probably blast Bakugo away with a screech before he got close, and if he did get close, he could rip him apart. But still, he didn't really mean to antagonize Bakugo the way he did. Silence stretched uncomfortably as Izuku folded his wings, leaving them out, but not in the way. I've had a quirk for years. That's bullshit. Bakugo snarled. If you've had a quirk this whole time, why have you been acting quirkless, huh? You looking down on me, huh? What makes you think that? When have I ever dash? You know what? Yes, I am looking down on you. That was definitely not one of his brightest moments, but at the same time, the teacher had stopped the altercation from getting any worse. And now he could hear Bakugo running around the school looking for him, screaming about how he was going to explode his face. The building doesn't technically have roof access, so Bakugo wasn't likely to find him up here. Unless he remembers you're a bird. Yeah, there was that. Izuku hadn't flown up to the roof, though. He had climbed up the tree next to the building that was tall enough to reach the roof. He liked how the bullies never realized he was here. It was the only time he ever got any peace while at school. Izuku startled when his phone buzzed. He wasn't expecting anyone to call or text him. Pulling out his phone, he stared at it. There was a new text, but he didn't know the number. Unknown. Hey baby bird, I see you're on a roof again. You need to talk to someone? Oh, I wonder when Hawks got my number? Izuku muttered. Looking up and shading his eyes from the sun, Izuku saw Hawk's silhouette way up in the sky. He briefly considered flipping him off but decided to just give a small wave instead. Izuku, not really. I'm just having lunch. It's peaceful on the roof. Hawks. Ooh, lunch break. I haven't had mine yet. How much longer do you have? I'll join you. Izuku, about 5 minutes. Hawks, boo, too short to get something. But I can still keep you company for the rest of the lunch PRD. Izuku, really rather you didn't. Don't want anyone to see you up here and realize I'm here too. Hawks, are you embarrassed, baby bird? Izuku, the roof is where I go to get away from bullies. If they find out I come up here because of you, I will disown you. Hawks, fine. I'll leave you alone for lunch, but I'm going to escort you home after school. I bet you want to go flying, right? Izuku's entire face lit up at that. Yes, he wanted to go flying. He wasn't able to fly at all yesterday, nor last. He was buzzing with excitement as he returned to class. When the bell rang at the end of the day, Izuku dashed out of the class and was happy to see Hawks really was waiting for him at the school gates. Without even stopping to greet the older bird, Izuku spread his wings and took to the sky in a flurry of gray and white wings. He smirked when he heard Hawk's indignant squawk as he quickly tried to catch up. "Baby bird, really? I was kinda expecting at least a hello, you know," he said as he caught up. Izuku was fast, but not as fast as Hawks. After all, owls weren't built for speed but for stealth. "I missed the sky," Izuku replied. "And if you wanted a hello, then maybe don't stand at the school gates next time. You are attracting too much attention." "Okay, that's fair, I guess." The two soared lazily for a few minutes before he asked, "Anywhere in particular you want to go, baby bird?" "Not really, but can we stop at Eraser's place so I can drop off my bag and change out of my uniform?" "Sure, I still haven't had lunch. There was a villain right as I was about to get some chicken, so I'm more than willing to take you to dinner. Please say you like chicken." Hawks pleaded. "Is that your stupid question of the day?" "Of course I do. What kind of raptor doesn't like chicken?" "Thank you. You don't even want to know how many times a day I get called a cannibal for liking chicken." Hawks smiled brightly. "Anyone who doesn't know raptors eat birds is an uneducated moron," Izuku snarked. 20 minutes later found both birds on a billboard with a bucket of chicken. "How was your day? I seem to recall you were pretending to be quirkless before, but you didn't hesitate to fly off today. Something changed?" Hawk says, "Oh, yeah. Detective Tsukachi took me to get my Quirk registered yesterday, and Shoyuta updated my information at the school today. I don't know if I was originally going to let out the truth today, but the teacher wouldn't just let me come to class late without an explanation." Izuku scowled at the chicken before he took a bite. "Even though I had a late pass that explained it to him." "Move there," Hawks stated around a mouthful of chicken. Izuku huffed out a small laugh. "Yeah, but it wasn't as bad as other things he's done." "Dude, little chick, do I need to try to get a teacher fired?" "It's more like the whole school," he replied sardonically. "No one wants to see the stupid quirkless kid do well, so I've had grades altered, homework lost, detentions for fighting and being a distraction in class. Sometimes I wasn't even allowed to go to lunch. It's the same with all quirkless kids," Izuku shrugged. Hawks was quiet for a few minutes, processing all of that. "I knew it was bad, but I didn't know it was that bad," he whispered finally. "And that was just from the teachers?" "Yeah. The students like to use their quirks to hurt quirkless kids. The teachers never even pretended to care." Izuku stared out into the distance, lost in thought. "I haven't met any other quirkless kids in person, but I'm on a few forums. It's the same with all of us." Hawks put his arm around Izuku, and he leaned into his hug. "Most of the people on the forums have talked about killing themselves, and I've even seen a few posts where some did a suicide pact, and then their names were never seen again." He rubbed at his eyes. A few tears had started falling. Hawk's hold on him tightened. "Promise me, Owlet, that you won't try again." Izuku was silent. "Baby bird, I'm serious." "I know you are," he said. "I just don't want to break a promise." He buried his face in Hawk's shoulder. "I want to say I won't, but I don't know if I'm at a place yet where I can say for sure that I'm good. I'll talk to Eraser about getting you some therapy." Hawks was running his fingers through Izuku's hair, lightly scratching his scalp. "In the meantime, how about a different promise? For the next week, promise me you won't try again. If I can't get a full-on never again promise, I'll at least try to get a short timeframe promise." Izuku smiled softly up at Hawks. "I can do that, Hawks." "Kigo," came his reply. "My name is Takami Kigo. Call me Kigo." "I can do that, Kigo." Turns out, promising a week was a bit more difficult than Izuku had thought. He had managed to make it to Friday without any issues, but while he was on the way home from school, he saw his mom. She was on the phone, and Izuku could hear that she was talking to the principal of Aldera, discussing his sudden quirk manifestation. Izuku had made sure his mother didn't see him, but she didn't have to see him and talk to him for his self-worth to plummet. Izuku had made it home and was glad that Hisashi was already home. He leapt into the man's arms and held on tight, tears quickly soaking his shirt. There was no way he could be alone right now, with nothing but his thoughts to keep him company. "Oh sweetie, what happened?" Hisashi asked, holding Izuku just as tightly as Izuku was holding him. Izuku shook his head. He didn't want to talk, he just wanted to be held. Hisashi was definitely willing to give the little bird all the comfort he needed. Hisashi and Izuku stayed on the couch for a few hours, until Shoyuta and Hitoshi returned home. Shoyuta took a look at them and with a concerned look asked, "What happened?" With a sad look, Hisashi whispered, "He hasn't said yet." Hitoshi moved to sit on one of the couches, wanting to help but not sure how, and Shoyuta sat next to Izuku and ran his hands through his curls. "Hey kid, can you try to tell us?" Izuku sniffled a little and said, "He made me promise not to try to kill myself for a week." His voice broke as he continued, "It hasn't even been 3 days, and I want to break my promise." All three took a sharp breath. "Oh, little one dash," Hisashi was interrupted. "I saw my mom. She didn't see me, but she was on the phone with my principal. Kept calling me useless, and then the principal told her I had a quirk. She started to refer to me as it, and then said she didn't know or care where I was, that I wasn't her problem anymore." Izuku was still clinging to Hisashi, and it seemed as though his hands had locked their grips, so there was no letting go. I don't know why you're bothering with me. I'm just some useless bird. I'm not worth anything. You never should have taken me in." Izuku's tears that had stopped a while ago had come back full force. "I just wanted to end, but I promised Kigo I wouldn't." An hour or so later, once Shoyuta had dinner ready, Izuku had finally let go of Hisashi. The four of them were seated at the kitchen table. "Thank you," Izuku whispered. "Thank you for being there for me. I know I'm a mess right now, but you didn't leave me. Thank you." "Izuku," Shoyuta said, "you might not be in the best mental space right now, but you're still worthy of being loved." They finished dinner quietly, and Hitoshi gently grabbed Izuku's sleeve and dragged him into his room to talk alone. "I'm not sure if you know this or not," Hitoshi started, "but Dad and Papa adopted me when I was 7. I did hear you were an emergency foster and later adopted, but that's all I was told. My birth parents, well, one of the neighbors had suspicions that they were mistreating me, and one night while they were out, they had gotten mugged. Dad had saved them. Instead of just saying, 'Thank you,' and going about the rest of their night, they told him that they thought their neighbors were abusing their kid." Hitoshi paused there, tracing a scar on his cheek. "My parents had kept me in the closet with a too small muzzle for years at that point, from the time my quirk had manifested at 4, until Dad came and got me out. Trust me, Izuku, if anyone knows a thing about self-depreciating, suicidal thoughts, it's me. Dad and Papa will do what they can to comfort you, but if you need to talk to someone who gets it, who still sometimes thinks only the worst about themselves, I'll always be here to talk to." Izuku hugged him. "Thank you, Hitoshi." The days turned into weeks, and every Monday, Kigo made Izuku promise to stay alive for one more week. Every Wednesday Izuku had therapy, and while it was going to be an uphill battle, Izuku could already see some improvement. He still had his dark thoughts, but he wasn't openly speaking ill of himself as much anymore. Part of that was thanks to his new brother. Hitoshi had purchased a small water gun, and every time he heard Izuku say something self-depreciating, he would squirt him like a misbehaving cat and make him repeat himself in a more positive way. The first few times were really annoying, but after a few days Izuku had managed to catch himself before Hitoshi squirted him. Every other day Shoyuta and Hitoshi trained for the UA recommendation entrance exam, and they had invited Izuku to join them. Izuku readily accepted and Shoyuta quickly realized that even though Izuku was a force to be reckoned with, he had no formal training. And it showed. Izuku had quickly decided, upon getting thrashed by Hitoshi while fighting Quirkless, that he needed to learn how to use a weapon. He wasn't interested in learning Shuta's capture scarf, it'd just get in the way of his wings, but he was sure Shoyuta could teach him something else. So, one night while they were all at home, Hisashi and Hitoshi in the kitchen getting dinner ready, Izuku decided to ask Shoyuta about weapons training. "Shoyuta?" Izuku was sitting next to him while watching TV. Well, Izuku was watching TV, Shoyuta was running his fingers through Izuku's hair while looking at cat videos, grinning every time he heard Izuku hoot quietly. Shoyuta looked up from the video, giving Izuku his full attention, something Izuku was still getting used to. No one had ever cared enough to actually pay attention to him before. I was wondering, can you teach me how to use weapons? It's just, all I have are my talons and Screech, and getting my butt handed to me by Hitoshi every single time we spar is kind of embarrassing. Izuku nuzzled his face onto Shuta's shoulder, in a mix of embarrassment and really liking the way he played with his hair. Shoyuta huffed out an amused breath. Sure think it. But you have to keep something in mind in sparring with Toshi. I've been training that kid since he was 8. If he couldn't beat you in a spar, I'd be disappointed. Anyways, I was planning to bring up the thought of a weapon tomorrow. How do you feel about a bow staff? When the day of the recommendation exams came, Izuku wished Hitoshi good luck, and went to spend the day with Kigo. His own exam was going to be in just 3 days, and he was getting nervous. He was still on the fence about if he was ready to really show off his true strength. There was a difference between being the useless Deku he was and being Screech. He was really hoping that a talk with Kigo would be able to help him get through this practical, so once again, they found themselves up on a billboard with a bucket of chicken. So, you're worried about being yourself? Kigo asked. Well, yes. I mean, I've been the weak dash. I may not have a squirt gun, but if you keep talking like that, I'll bop you with a feather or shove you off this billboard, Kigo warned. Aizawa told me about what your other brother does every time you talk shit about yourself, and I'm getting in on that too. I've been acting weak for my whole life, and being more confident is hard. I don't really know how to do it. I mean, I can do it when I have my Screech mask on, but I don't know if I can do it without the mask. Izuku said, fixing his statement. Better, Kigo acknowledged. As for the confidence, think of it like adopting your own hero persona. Yes, it's easier with a mask, but not all heroes wear a mask. All the pros have a hero persona. Kigo paused for a moment and then continued. Well, all the spotlight pros do. I don't think Eraserhead would be able to do a hero persona if his life depended on it. You don't really have one, do you? I mean, you seem like the same person every time I see you. Izuku pointed out. Oh, I do, my baby bird, I most certainly do. The thing is, a hero persona is merely taking an aspect of your personality and exaggerating it. I'm an easygoing guy, and not a lot really gets to me. I take that part of my personality, and I maintain that attitude when doing pretty much anything. Izuku thought about that for a minute. Did he do something like that? Could he do something like that? Maybe he already did? After all, Screech was powerful, Screech was confident, Screech was able to fight back and protect others. Present Mike has a hero persona, too. You really think he'd be able to be as unrecognizable out of costume as he is if he was the same person in costume as he is out? You see him on the daily, is that really what you picture when you imagine Present Mike? Kigo ruffled his hair. Izuku kept thinking. Kigo was making some really good points. But how was he supposed to make a hero persona for himself? Come here, turn around. I want to preen your feathers, little bro. Izuku chirped in excitement and let Kigo have full access to his feathers. If I have my mask on, it comes pretty easy to me, Izuku said, before letting out a content hoot as Kigo gave him a light scratch at the base of his wings. But I don't think I can wear my mask while at UA. True, you probably can't. Or at least you probably shouldn't. Kigo ran his fingers through the white and gray feathers, straightening them. What makes you Screech? Describe Screech to me, as if I had never met Screech. Izuku thought about it for a minute. Screech is confident, he started. Screech is a proud protector, someone who wants to maintain the peace in his territory. He's Dash. He's you, stop talking in third person, Kigo corrected gently. I'm confident. I'm a proud protector, and I want to maintain peace in my territory, Izuku whispered. But, Kigo, I'm really not confident. I do, and have always wanted to protect others, but I've never been confident outside of my Screech act. Then keep up the act. Baby bird, every hero out there has to be able to stand strong, be able to put forth an aura of safety. They need to be able to let the civilians know they're going to be okay now. The hero is there. You already do that as Screech, but now you need to do that as Izuku. Kigo pulled him into a hug. I have faith in you, Owlet. You'll do great. Izuku was still a little worried about how he was going to do in the practical exam since he still wasn't really used to using his quirk in front of people, but he promised both Shoyuta and Kigo that he would do his best, and his best included using his quirk. So, he was going to go into that exam as Screech, not as the useless Deku he'd been acting his entire life. He was going to try to remain confident, like Kigo had said. He had managed to complete the written exam with little trouble. He always knew he was smart, and that his low grades were because of the teachers messing with him, so the exam being easy wasn't a surprise. Seeing Hisashi in his full present Mike persona threw him for a loop, though. After living with him for the past 3 weeks and the conversation he had with Kei about hero personas, Izuku was able to really appreciate what a hero persona truly was. Izuku had practically forgotten just how extra present Mike was. That man on stage was not the same man that gave him warm hugs and cooked pancakes with chocolate chip grins for breakfast. Izuku had stars in his eyes as he watched Hisashi explain about the practical exam, the different robots he would have to face, and even how he reacted when some blue-haired student interrupted him. Hisashi, present Mike, was so cool. After everyone was given their instructions and released from the auditorium, Izuku headed to his group's exam area. He chose not to stand all that close to the entrance gate. It was a pretty big gate, and he could easily fly through it. No need to risk getting himself crushed in the mass of bodies all trying to get in at the same time. He was ready. He knew he could do this. Izuku bounced a bit on the ball of his feet, getting ready to spread his wings. All he needed was for Hisashi to yell out, "Go!" And Izuku was off. He spread his wings and took off like a bullet, speeding past the first few robots, not wanting to risk hurting anyone with his Screech, which is exactly what he unleashed in a cone about 20 meters into the battleground, at a group of 3-pointer robots. In one move, Izuku had gotten 12 points. He could do this. Time seemed to flash by, Izuku taking out robots with a Screech when no one was nearby but dropping to the ground and using his talons when someone was about to get hurt by a robot they hadn't noticed. He had lost count of his points, but he was sure he was doing fairly well when all of a sudden he felt the ground shake. Izuku took off from the ground to try to see what was happening and saw the biggest robot he had ever seen emerge. The 0-pointer. The 0P. Of course, why wouldn't it be 0P? Remembering that Hisashi had suggested to avoid it, Izuku turned around mid-flight, ready to see if he could pick off a few smaller robots when he heard a pain-filled cry. Help! Izuku let his hearing guide his eyes and he saw a girl with a brown bob cut pinned under a slab of concrete, and he dived, aiming a Screech at the 0P on the way to push it back and give him some extra time to work. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked the girl. "My leg, it's stuck," she cried. "Yeah, I got that. Are you hurt? If I can get that slab off you, can you run? Or do you need me to carry you?" Izuku retorted. "I think my ankle is sprained," she answered. "Okay." Izuku tried to move the concrete slab, but it was just a bit too heavy for him to do anything with it. He sighed and then said, "Cover your ears." Once she had her ears covered, he took a breath and screeched at the slab of concrete, breaking it apart and enabling the girl to escape. He picked her up and as he was flying her back to the entrance, he heard Hisashi call out, "And that's time." All of the remaining robots stopped moving, and Izuku located a field medic. He thought it was Recovery Girl, and flew down with the girl. Izuku felt pretty good about his performance. Shoyuta was in the observation room, watching the start of the practical, grinning like a maniac as Izuku took off and streaked through the gates. He was very proud to see his little owl son embracing his quirk in the exam, knowing full well that he wasn't originally planning to use it at all. In case anyone was wondering, Screech is mine, Shoyuta informed the rest of the teachers. "Midoriya already lives with you," Nedzu pointed out. "You should give Vlad the chance to have him in his class." Shoyuta glared at Vlad, silently daring him to agree with Nedzu. No, Aizawa can have him," he said nervously. Shoyuta grinned and turned his gaze back to the monitors. "Good answer." Izuku walked out of the changing room and saw Hitoshi waiting for him. "Hey Aizu, how do you think you did?" he asked. "Hey, I think I did okay." I took out a few robots, but I didn't get as many as I probably could have. I spent a lot of the time helping people avoid getting hurt. Izuku shrugged. I mean, I couldn't just stand there and ignore it when a robot was about to shoot a laser at some kid. Well, you probably did a lot better than you think you did. So, I want to take you somewhere to celebrate. Hitoshi grinned at him. I found a cafe I think you might like. Oh really? One that I might like. Izuku raised an eyebrow at his brother. Why do I have the feeling that it's one you might like and I'm just the convenient excuse to go? Hitoshi shrugged. I have no idea what you're talking about. He turned a mischievous grin towards Izuku. We're still going though. Izuku laughed. Of course, of course. It didn't take long for the two of them to come to the cafe. After just one look, Izuku almost turned around and walked off, but was stopped by a cackling Hitoshi. Oh, come on, just for a little bit? Please? Ugh, fine. But next time we're finding some, I don't know, brainwasher cafe, or something, Izuku grumbled as Hitoshi dragged him into the Owl Cafe. I doubt a brainwasher cafe would be very profitable, Hitoshi laughed. We're not all that adorable. But I mean, look at these little guys. Hitoshi was cooing at all the little owls in the cafe. Izuku had to admit they were cute, and he wasn't really upset that Hitoshi had brought them here. He had heard about these places before. Owl cafes were just like cat cafes, and this one looked pretty cozy. There were perches all over the cafe, some cubby holes for owls that wanted to hide, some areas were darker than others, and there was no loud music playing. Instead there were the sounds of a forest at night. Izuku felt at peace in this cafe. Not that he really wanted to tell Hitoshi that. As the two brothers found a table and ordered some food and drinks, they were pleased to see an owl had decided to come say hello. A pretty snowy owl swooped onto the perch at their table and then hopped down and wandered to Hitoshi and started grooming his hair. Izuku giggled and pulled out his phone to take a picture. I'm sending this to Hizashi, Izuku warned him. Yeah, Papa would probably get a kick out of that. Hitoshi started petting the owl, marveling at how soft the feathers were. I didn't think they'd be so soft. Yeah, Izuku replied, owl feathers aren't the same as other birds. We have more soft, fluffy feathers. It's part of what makes us so quiet in flight. Izuku dropped a few more owl facts to Hitoshi while they were both enamored by the snowy owl at their table. Eventually, though, Izuku had a question that would change the subject into something deeper, heavier. Hey Toshi? Can I ask a question that might be a bit too personal? Izuku was looking down at his coffee, not even attempting to meet Hitoshi's eyes. You don't have to answer if you don't want to. Sure. Hitoshi raised an eyebrow, wondering where this was going. Izuku started and then paused, not sure how he wanted to start this. Okay, I'm not trying to be mean when I say this, really, I'm not. He glanced up at Hitoshi, checking to see if he was annoyed or not yet. When he got a small grin, he decided to continue. How are you so confident? He ended in a whisper. Hitoshi's eyes widened at that. That was not where he thought this was going. What do you mean? Izuku squirmed. Again, I don't mean to be offensive to you, really, I'm not. Izuku, I can tell you're not trying to be mean, but if you don't spit it out, I'll never even know what you're not being mean about, Hitoshi interrupted. All right. Izuku took a deep breath, held it for a few seconds, and then released it. With a quirk and past like yours, I can imagine a lot of self-esteem issues. I doubt anyone would normally want to talk to you. And even if they didn't know your quirk, the fear of accidentally triggering it would make you want to not talk. I'm wondering how you managed to get over all of that. Hitoshi was silent. He just ran his hand over the feathers of the owl at his side. Izuku couldn't tell if he was upset with him, contemplating his answer, or if he had managed to trigger a silent episode. Just as Izuku was about to apologize, Hitoshi spoke. You're right. And for a few months after I was adopted, the only person I would speak to was Dad. I wouldn't even speak to Papa. They both taught me JSL, so I was able to communicate, but I wouldn't talk. One day, when Dad was out and I thought Papa didn't have his hearing aids in, I was singing along to the radio. Hitoshi had a soft smile on his face. Papa had been testing out a new pair of hearing aids, much smaller and barely visible. He heard me singing. Pretended he couldn't, though didn't want me to stop. I take it you sing really well? Hitoshi huffed out a laugh. Papa says it's because I have a vocal quirk, that's why my voice is so nice. Even when my voice started changing, it never cracked, squeaked, broke, nothing. Lucky, I still squeak sometimes, Izuku mumbled as Hitoshi smirked. But Papa heard me, he continued. After that day, he started to coerce me into talking more. He bribed me, I'm not ashamed to admit it. He trained me like a dog. He would give me treats whenever I would use my voice. Hitoshi laughed. It only lasted a few weeks, though. Dad found out and kicked him out of the house for a few days. But Papa is the one who helped me build my confidence. Dad made sure I knew how to use my quirk properly, but my self-esteem issues were all handled by Papa. Oh, and my therapist too, I guess, but mainly Papa. Izuku looked thoughtfully back at his coffee. Why the sudden interest? Hitoshi asked. It's something me and Kigo were talking about the other day. I've been having a difficult time with my confidence lately. In the exam today, I wasn't really all that sure if I was going to be able to use my quirk in front of all those other examinees. Izuku looked up quickly, worried Toshi was going to squirt him for that, and was relieved to see him nodding to continue. Acting weak has been a central part of my life for so long, I don't really know how not to do it. But when I'm Screech, it just comes naturally. Kigo said it was like I'm adopting a hero persona, and he's probably right. I have noticed that you're a lot more confident when you're fighting than when you're doing anything else, Hitoshi pointed out. Yeah. But that's another thing. I want to be, not a nervous wreck? Like most of the time? I don't need to be Screech 24/7, but I'd like to be a functional person? I'm working on it, but it's hard, Izuku finished in a whisper. That's why I asked. From what I know about you, your quirk, and your past, I figured you had these same problems at one point. You should definitely take this to Papa. If anyone can help you with building up your confidence, it'd be him. He was so cool today, Izuku said, the stars back in his eyes. I had almost forgotten just how awesome Present Mike is. After these past few weeks living with Hisashi, seeing Present Mike, I swear he's a totally different person. Hisashi? Izuku asked after dinner that night. He'd been thinking about the conversations he'd had with both Kigo and with Hitoshi all day, and he had decided that Hitoshi was right. He'd have to bring his problem up with Hisashi. Yeah? What's up? Hisashi said while doing dishes, with Izuku helping. Well, here's the thing. Izuku hesitated, not quite sure how to ask this. Today, seeing you on the stage not as Hisashi, but as Present Mike, that was really cool. I couldn't help but thinking that's what a hero persona is supposed to be, because I didn't see Hisashi on stage, I only saw Present Mike. Well, thanks, little listener, I have spent a lot of years perfecting that act. I would hope I've got it down fairly well by now. Hisashi grinned, a bit unsure where Izuku was going with this, but willing to just roll with it. Well, the other day, Kigo was talking to me about something, and it kind of helped me today. I was really nervous about using my quirk at the exam today. Izuku started. He could see Hisashi nodding along, knowing how Izuku had felt. I have a lot of issues with my confidence that I'm trying to work on, and Kigo said something about how I was already halfway to creating a hero persona with my Screech act, and that if I went in as Screech, I should be okay. Well, I've never met you as Screech, so I can't say anything about that, but from what I've heard from Sho, and what I saw of the exam today, you're a very competent fighter. You probably do have a good hero persona started there. Hisashi agreed. And then earlier today, me and Toshi were in a cafe, and I was asking him about how he's so confident, despite everything he's been through, and he said most of it was thanks to you. Izuku paused and looked up at Hisashi. I guess what I'm trying to ask is, can you help me with that too? I think my Screech persona might be decent, but my normal day-to-day confidence needs some serious work, he ended in a whisper. Hisashi pulled Izuku into a tight hug. Sure thing, kiddo. You're a bit older than Toshi was, so don't expect instant results, but I'm sure we can definitely get you a bit more confident in yourself before high school starts. We have until April after all. Thanks. February and March passed quickly, and while Izuku wasn't yet at his brother's level of confidence, he was a lot further than he had been. His progress had made huge leaps and bounds, and he had felt he was ready for the first of high school. Right up until he looked at the front gates. Nope, I can't do this. I'm out. Izuku turned and started walking away, but a laughing Hitoshi grabbed him around the waist and hefted him over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes and just started walking into the building. You're going to do fine, Aizu, he said with a smirk. And I bet you'll even make a friend or two. Maybe even 3. You know everyone is staring at us, right? Izuku pointed out, hoping that would make Toshi put him down. Well, you shouldn't have tried to run, Hitoshi shrugged with the shoulder Izuku wasn't on. It's not like this is the first time you've been to UA, so really, I don't see the issue. I haven't been to a new school with new classmates since I first started primary school. Izuku complained. Aldra District had all the same kids. About time you met new people, then. They had reached the door to the class. If I put you down, will you walk into the class on your own, or will you attempt to run again? He teased and set Izuku down. Izuku could hear Bakugo in the class. He wanted to run. He really wanted to run. He didn't want to see Bakugo again. Gods, why did he have to be in 1A again? Wasn't there another class, 1B? He should have been put in that class, or even the general education class. He doesn't deserve to be in the same. Eek. He felt the cold splash of water from Hitoshi's squirt gun. If you're going to mumble, make sure it's positive, Aizu. So now, repeat what you said, but positively. Hitoshi's glare threatened to turn the squirt gun on him again. Izuku gulped nervously. I deserve to be here, he said hesitantly. DMN right you do. What scores did you get on the exam? I got first place on the entrance exam, a 97% on the written, and 102 points on the practical, Izuku said, still quiet, but not a whisper anymore. Don't you dare forget that. Now, continue. I don't really remember what else I said. He glanced at the door again. I can hear one of the kids from my old school in there, and, well, he was one of your bullies, wasn't he? At Izuku's hesitant nod, Hitoshi continued. If he messes with you, I'll have him walk into oncoming traffic. Don't worry about it. Hitoshi grinned his dad's evil grin. Let's go. Izuku opened the door to Class 1A, and there, at the far end of the classroom, was Bakugo. It hadn't been all that long since he had last seen Bakugo. After all, there was only about 10 days separating third year of middle school and first year of high school. But those 10 days had been amazing. 10 days where he hadn't had to listen to Bakugo screaming at him about his sudden quirk, demanding where this quirk came from, why he'd never shown it before if he'd really had it for years. 10 days where he hadn't been called useless. 10 days where the voice in the back of his head wasn't telling him he would be better off dead. Hitoshi must have realized that Izuku was having a tough time, because he put his hand on Izuku's shoulder and guided him into the classroom and towards where the seating chart was on the podium. Nope, you're switching seats with me, Hitoshi said, seeing that Izuku's seat was directly behind Bakugo Katsuki, the blonde kid who was so loud he was heard from outside. Hitoshi's seat was behind Izuku's, with Yaoyorozu Momo behind him. Come on. The two approached their desks and the blue-haired boy Izuku remembered from the entrance exam, the one who had interrupted Present Mix explanation and was currently berating Bakugo for putting his feet on the desk, turned to them. Hello. My name is Ida Tenya. It is nice to meet you. Izuku eeped but was saved by Hitoshi's lazy drawl. Yeah, I'm Shinso Hitoshi, and the nervous one is Midoriya Izuku. Before Izuku had a chance to try to introduce himself, Bakugo just had to stand up. What the f are you doing here? I told you not to show your face here, he screamed. Oh, Hitoshi drawled. I don't think I like you much. Hitoshi! Izuku hissed in warning. What? It's obvious he's a bully by the name calling alone. He looked back at Bakugo. My brother's name isn't Deku. There's a lot of names I'll allow someone to call him, but I will not allow anyone to call him useless. Understood? Deku doesn't have a brother. Bakugo snarled at Hitoshi. He does now, came Hitoshi's lazy reply. Hitoshi, there's no need to play nice with fools like him, came a quiet voice. Hitoshi glanced at the speaker. Oh hey Shudo. Glad to see we're in the same class. While still facing away from Bakugo, Hitoshi whispered to Izuku, go to your seat, me and Shudo will distract him until Dad gets here. Izuku quickly followed his brother's advice, shooting them both a grateful look as the red and white-haired boy got closer and stood in between him and Bakugo. In the months Izuku had been living with Shoyuta, Hizashi, and Hitoshi, he'd met only one of Hitoshi's friends, Todoroki Shoto. Since Hitoshi was adopted by a pair of pro-heroes, he was considered a legacy child, and as such was allowed places where typically only pro-heroes and their kids were allowed. Like the exclusive grocery store Hizashi liked to go for his throat lozenges, and Shuta's favorite jelly pouches. That was also the place he had met Shuto and his sister Fuyumi. The two had exchanged numbers and had been friends ever since, almost 4 years now. Shuto had also met Izuku and knew some of his habits by now and could see that the blonde kid was upsetting him. Izuku would normally be nervous about allowing anyone to stand in Bakugo's way, but he knew how strong Hitoshi was, and from what he'd told Izuku, Shuto was even stronger. There was no need to worry about those two. Before they could really start ignoring Bakugo, he heard Shoyuta arrive at the door and looked up. He was the only one to do so, but he could also tell that both Shuto and Hitoshi had noticed him as well. Izuku looked around at the class, wondering why no one else had noticed their teacher had arrived, and was about to say something when he heard Shuta's whispered, "Don't. I'm timing them." Izuku nodded and sat back in his seat and just watched as Bakugo got more and more upset with Hitoshi and Shuto being in his way of assaulting Izuku, and the rest of the class being oblivious to Shuta's arrival. 5 minutes after the bell had rung, Shoyuta finally made a noise and 2 of the students at the front of the class shrieked, catching the attention of the rest of the class. With 3 exceptions, it took 5 minutes and 37 seconds for you lot to notice me. Shoyuta pulled out a jelly pouch and slurped it up. Unacceptable. I expect better from you tomorrow. Shoyuta stood up and shed his yellow sleeping bag. My name is Aizawa Shoyuta, and I'll be your homeroom teacher for the next 3 years. Assuming you last the next 3 years. He pulled out gym uniforms from behind the podium. Put these on and meet me at the PE field. Hitoshi, Izuku, and Shuto were the first 3 to the field, knowing full well how much Shoyuta would berate them if they took too long to get changed. The rest of the class, however, didn't know anything about their new teacher. Shoyuta gave the class his best disappointed glare. It took you almost 15 minutes to get here. That is unacceptable. From today on, you will be here within 5 minutes. Now, on to the reason we're out here. You kids have been doing these since junior high, right? Physical fitness tests where you weren't allowed to use your quirks. The country still uses averages taken from results of students not using their quirks. It's not rational, especially for heroes in training. Midoriya, you got first place on the entrance exam. Shoyuta looked at the nervous Izuku. In middle school, what was your score for a ball toss? Maybe 21 meters? Izuku was proud of himself for not stuttering. Then try doing it with your quirk. You can do whatever you want so long as you stay in the circle. Give it all you've got. Izuku was sure only Hitoshi could tell that Shuta's expression was encouraging, everyone else would just see a blank stare. Izuku had gotten good at reading the underground pro. Izuku caught the ball Shoyuta threw at him and got into the circle. Okay, anything goes. Izuku took a deep breath, but then seemed to catch himself and looked back at the students. You might want to cover your ears? Once he saw that they had, he gave them a small smile and then turned back to the field and took his deep breath again, before lightly tossing the ball and unleashing the most powerful screech he felt was safe at the ball, blasting it across the field. Shoyuta looked at his reader and raised an eyebrow. A moment later, the score 874.2 meters showed up, and Shoyuta showed it to the class. Know your maximum first. That is the most rational way to form the foundation of a hero. So manly! Kirishima exclaimed while punching his fists together. I'm getting pumped up. Awesome! This looks like fun. Izuku had to turn away when he heard that comment from Ishido, as he knew he was going to start snickering if he so much as looked at either Shoyuta or Hitoshi. And sure enough, when Shoyuta grinned and put an end to the excitement, he heard Hitoshi snicker. It looks fun, you say? So, you all were planning to spend your 3 years here having a good time while making friends? What happened to being a hero? Shuta's tone and expression made the entire group fall silent. All right then, new rule. Whoever gets the lowest score, Shoyuta paused for the dramatic effect. Will be instantly expelled. What? But that's not fair. Uraraka complained, but that was instantly shut down by Shoyuta while Izuku did his best to ignore Hitoshi laughing. Unfair? Then what about natural disasters? Massive accidents? Or how about villain attacks? Shuta's creepy grin was intensified as he lifted his hair out of his face. All kinds of unfairness are hurled at heroes on the daily, and it's our job to turn that unfairness around. If you were expecting to have a fun-filled, normal high school experience, then you're sorely mistaken. For the next 3 years of your life in this school, UA is going to be throwing one hardship after another at you. Plus Ultra, and all that stuff. The first real test after that demonstration was the 50-meter dash. Izuku knew he was going to do pretty well at that one. He might not be as fast as Kigo, but he was still a very fast bird. He got into the ready position next to Ida and spread his wings. As soon as the signal was given, he beat his wings and leapt. 2.89 seconds, chirped the reader, Ida getting 3.04 seconds. Izuku grinned as he walked back to Hitoshi. Beating a kid with literal engines in his legs, not bad. I just hope I can crack the 5-second mark this time. I'm usually around 6, Hitoshi said. When it was his turn, Hitoshi was up against Uraraka, who was using her quirk to remove the gravity on her clothes. The two got into position, and at the signal Hitoshi darted forward. 5.92 seconds. Yes. Hitoshi cheered. Finally broke out of the 6-second range. He trotted over to Izuku, purposely not looking at his dad. He knew he was going to see a proud grin on his face if he were to look. The next test was the grip strength test. In this one, Hitoshi decided to use his quirk. With a little smirk and a gamble, he spoke. Hey Aizu. Yeah. Izuku's mind went blank. This wasn't the first time he'd been under Hitoshi's quirk before. He had asked to experience it the first time they had a training session together, so he knew exactly what was happening and wasn't surprised at all when Hitoshi ordered him to grip the handheld device. He was however surprised when he got a score of 572 kilograms. Releasing Izuku from his control and showing Shoyuta, who wrote the score down for both boys, Hitoshi grinned at Izuku. I read somewhere that owls have a grip that's like 10x greater than a human's, and I wanted to test it out. I normally have around the mid-50s as my score. After the grip test was the standing long jump, and Izuku looked over at Shoyuta and asked, since I can fly, is this one really necessary? I mean, the score is either cleared sandbox, or didn't clear sandbox, right? Shoyuta gave him a deadpan look, sighed, and then said, yeah, you can skip this one. Shinso, you take his place. Sure thing. Hey Aizu. Hitoshi raised an eyebrow in challenge. Izuku huffed out a little laugh. Sure, he replied, getting drawn into his brother's quirk again. Take this test for me, would you? Izuku got into the starting position for the test and spread his wings. With a single beat of his wings, Izuku easily cleared the sandbox and glided back over to Hitoshi. Sensei! Ida shouted with an arm chop. He didn't take the test. You sure about that? Shoyuta challenged. Yes. Ida confirmed. Shinso never even got near the sandbox. Ida, this is a quirk assessment test, not a physical assessment test. Shinso used his quirk. I am finding the baseline for my students' quirks. Shoyuta raised an eyebrow at Ida. And since you're so concerned about this test, you can take your turn next. Ida didn't clear the sandbox, and he fell on his butt, getting some sand into his pipes as he got up. The repeated side steps were annoying for everyone, as were the sit-ups and the seated toe touch, where Shinso tied with Ishido, both being able to fully fold themselves in half. For the long-distance run, Izuku kept up a lazy flight while keeping up with Yaoyorozu on her bicycle. When it came time for the rest of the class to do their ball throw, Izuku was sure Hitoshi was going to use him again, but this time he called for someone else. Uraraka, can you do me a solid? Her eyes went blank. Use your quirk on this ball, came the order. A score of infinity later, Hitoshi was leaning against his brother. Well, that was the last test. I know I didn't get first place, but I think I cracked the top. What about you? Well, Izuku hesitated. He knew Hitoshi didn't have his squirt gun on him, but as much as he wanted to say he didn't do too well, he knows he did better than Hitoshi did. Maybe also top 5? Nope, try again, Hitoshi said as he pinched Izuku's shoulder lightly. Fine. Top 4. Hitoshi glared at him but decided to accept the answer. It was likely the best he was going to get right now. After everyone's scores were totaled up, Shoyuta stepped in front of the class. I'm not going to bother giving out the scores individually. The scores showed up in a hologram. Izuku had landed the top score, just barely beating out Yaoyorozu Momo in second, and Shuto in third. Hitoshi was fourth, and Bakugu was fifth. Izuku was blinking at the score, so stunned he didn't hear anything at all afterwards, only coming back to himself when Hitoshi lightly shoved him. Come on, let's go get changed back quickly. I want to see if Dad will let me drag him to that owl cafe this time. I still can't believe I got first place in the assessment test. Izuku exclaimed. I mean, yeah, I know you keep saying I'm strong, but I don't think I ever really believed it. Kigo and Izuku were flying around aimlessly, shortly after the sun had set. Kigo had wanted to know all about Izuku's first day of school, and Izuku had wanted to go flying. They had spent an hour just racing each other, doing all sorts of complicated aerial maneuvers, but now they were simply soaring, riding a breeze, not really going anywhere. Listen, Owlet, you are going to have to get this through your thick skull someday. You are amazing. Kigo sent one of his feathers to ruffle Izuku's hair. Hey, Izuku complained lightheartedly as he swiped at the feather. They were a fair distance apart, close enough for their raptor hearing to make conversation easy, but far enough so they couldn't collide in midair. There are so many talented students in my class, Izuku continued. There's this one girl who has super hearing. Like, I think her quirk was called earphone jack. She has little jacks on the ends of her earlobes, and she can plug them into things, and she can even amplify her heartbeat into a massive sound wave. That does sound cool. You said super hearing, right? That'd be awesome for recon. Not enough heroes out there with sensory amplification quirks. Recon is starting to struggle. There are a few in my class alone who would be great at recon. There's the girl with the earphone jacks, but there's also an invisible girl, a boy with 6 arms, and he can replace the hands with other body parts, like extra eyes, ears, mouths, probably even noses. Another boy can talk to animals. Imagine sending in mice or birds to gather intelligence. Izuku did a quick barrel roll and got a bit closer to Kigo. My classmates really are awesome, Izuku started. I was thinking for a while that I couldn't compare to them. After a while, though, and before Toshi even realized how I was feeling, I started to realize I was doing okay as well. I mean, Izuku paused for a moment, thinking, and then said, Ida has engines in his legs. He was able to finish the 50-meter dash in just over 3 seconds. Kigo whistled, impressed. I beat his time. Holy crap, Owlet. You been holding out on me? That's amazing. Kigo exclaimed. We had an endurance run and I tied with Yaoyorozu. She was able to create a bicycle, so she wasn't using much energy to do the run, and well, owls are really good gliders, so I wasn't using much energy either. I got a slightly higher score than Shoji on the grip test, and he's got 6 arms. The only reason I didn't get first place on the ball throw, I got 874.2 meters, was because Uraraka has a zero-gravity quirk and threw her ball into the stratosphere. We keep telling you, baby bird. Will you start listening to us now? Maybe, he muttered. Maybe you guys have a point. Izuku took a deep breath and started to turn back in the direction of where he lived with his new family. Kigo? Yeah, little chick? When do you think I can get a special license to go flying on my own? Kigo squawked in offense. You don't like flying with me anymore? Izuku laughed. No, it's not like that, you dumb pigeon. It's just, you're not available every night, and Zashi has been trying to find a self-care thing that helps me to relax. You know, like a bubble bath or meditation or essential oils or video games or something. You're a bird, the answer is kind of obvious, yeah? Man, is that hair of his to compensate for something? Kigo winced as Izuku shot the lightest screech possible at him, more of the equivalent of a smack upside the head. Okay, no teasing your dad, got it? Zashi is one of the best ever, he's my second favorite hero, and talking about him like that will drop you down from my number 3 to number. I don't know, but way lower than 3, Izuku pouted. Gasp. My baby bird bro. I'm only number 3 to you. But we're both burbs. Kigo darted in close to Izuku and grabbed him in a hug, causing them both to start dropping out of the sky. Izuku Gust gave him a deadpan look. Kigo, if we go splat, I'm going to torment you in the next life. Kigo laughed and let him go, both birds steadying their flight again. And no, you are not, nor have you ever been my favorite. That's always been Shoyuta. Izuku glanced back to Kigo, contemplating if he wanted to say this next part or not, then decided why not? I was always told to act quirkless. I still wanted to be a hero, but I thought I had to be a quirkless one. Eraserhead fights quirkless, basically. So, I wanted to be like him. I started following him, just watching him work, long before you even made your debut. Actually, the only reason you're my number 3 is because you're a burb like me. Okay, I get why Eraser's your number 1, but why am I not number 2? Kigo pouted. Who's your number 2 if not me? Present Mike, duh. Ugh, why him? He's not a burb. I don't care how much that hair of his makes him look like a cockatoo, he's not one. No, but he's got his voice. And his radio station. He does a lot of shows about quirk discrimination. Izuku gives Kigo a meaningful side eye. He also gives better hugs than you do. He does not. Kigo said indignantly. My hugs are big and comfy, and I also wrap you in my wings. I give the best hugs. Can he hug you in a free fall? I don't think so. Kigo shot forwards to hug Izuku again, but Izuku laughed, and another game of aerial tag began. The next day was a normal school day. They started with homeroom and then quickly moved on to other academic classes. Izuku was impressed to see that his teachers were all as competent as Hizashi as Mike Sensei was. Izuku had to constantly remind himself that he was Mike Sensei, not Hizashi, while at school. He thought it would be simple to differentiate the two, but a lot of his confidence lessons with Zashi were with him in his hero outfit, so Izuku had started being able to see the bits of Hizashi that peeked out. But all of his teachers were just as good as Mike Sensei, and none of them treated him like a failure. They don't know you're a waste of space. Izuku winced slightly. It had been a while since he last heard the voice so clearly. Grit. You'll always be useless. Why would you ever think to be rid of me? Maybe he'll try to call up his therapist after school. His next appointment isn't until Thursday, but maybe a quick call would help? Or he can always just talk to Toshi while they wait for Shoyuta and Zashi to finish their days. Don't be stupid, he would rather spend time with his boyfriend. You really want to deprive him of that? No, Izuku doesn't want to get in the way of that. Izuku realized he was starting to hunch into himself and actively sat back. Hizashi has said that he should pay attention to his body language. When he portrays himself as weak and pathetic, he makes himself feel that way. Sitting up straight, shoulders back, a confident position that can help to quiet the little voice in the back of his head. And it did. Izuku let out a small smile, a smile that got bigger when he noticed that Mike Sensei had noticed and was beaming at him with pride. He'll still call his therapist later today, but maybe he'll try to talk to Toshi if his therapist doesn't have time to chat. Battle trials. That's stupid. But at least he'll get to wear his hero costume. Shoyuta helped him design it. Opening his case, Izuku grinned at the costume that was an upgraded version of his old vigilante outfit. He had a dark gray long-sleeved armored shirt, with a black and gray flight jacket, similar to Kigo's, but a tighter fit. He had a visor like Kigo's, since it was highly practical for a bird, but unlike Kigo's, his had a setting to dim or lighten to protect his light-sensitive eyes. Izuku also had fingerless gloves that had reinforced knuckles, and on his belt was a collapsible bow staff. His pants were black and tucked into his dark gray, steel-toed combat boots. The only weapon Izuku had on him was the staff, but with his talons, gloves, and screech, Izuku wasn't sure he needed more. And if he did, well, Shoyuta said he could always add more to the costume. He walked out to join the rest of the class and listen to All Might introduce the activity. Toshi nudged Izuku. Is he actually reading from a script? He whispered. Izuku laughed lightly. Yeah, looks like it. Shudo hummed softly. He just said he's drawing partners by lots. Is that laziness? Or is he doing it for the legitimate reasons of heroes sometimes needing to pair up with whoever is available? You're so pretty, Sho, Hitoshi teased, causing Izuku to giggle. That had been one of Izuku's favorite insults Sho Yuta would say to Zashi, and one that Hitoshi picked up. It meant along the lines of, it's okay you're dumb, you're still pretty, and they only ever said it in jest. Everyone knew Shudo and Hizashi were extremely smart. I think he didn't bother to read anyone's files, Izuku said quietly, and doesn't know anyone's names. This is his way of acting as if he knows what he's doing. Hitoshi nodded. Hopefully we don't get paired up with anyone too bad. Everyone is really cool though, Izuku said. I bet any of them would be a good person to be teamed up with. Well, he paused for a second. Anyone except Bakugo. When the names were picked, Izuku was a little bummed to see he was paired up with Uraraka. Well, okay, while he would rather be paired with either Hitoshi or Shudo, she wouldn't be a bad match. So it'll be fine. He was absently paying attention to the other pairs and felt a little bad for Ida when he was paired with Bakugo. That was going to be a rough match. He felt bad for whichever team ended up going against them. Bakugo won't listen to Ida. He already thinks he's a stuck-up idiot, so no matter what team they're up against, Ida's essentially going to be in the way of Bakugo. Oh, wonderful, so his team is going up against Bakugo's team. Great. Bakugo's going to kill him. At least you already know you're going to die. He probably won't go after Uraraka. As Izuku walked over to his partner, he decided that this was probably one of those times he could, or rather should, be Screech. He's got 3 years of combat experience, he should be good. Screech is strong. No, wait, Kigo said not to talk about Screech as a separate person, he is Screech. Uraraka. Izuku walked up to his partner. Midoriya. Let's do our best, she smiled brightly. Izuku gave her a small smile back. When we get started, Bakugo is going to come straight at me. He's going to expect us to walk in the front door. Okay, well, if we're going to go in the front door, should we split up? Izuku let loose the Cheshire grin he was starting to pick up from Sho Yuta. Who said we're going to go in from the front door? Okay, so if we're not going in the front door, how are we going to do this? Uraraka asked with her head tilted. Oh, that's easy, Izuku countered. From the roof. See, he pointed to the building schematics, there's roof access. It'll be simple to get in through there. I can't really make myself weightless long enough to scale a building though, Uraraka tried to counter. Oh, I don't need you to. I can carry you up there. Izuku stretched his wings. Unless you weigh over 200 kilos, I can get you to the roof. I can't take you on a super long flight or anything, but a quick hop up to the roof is easy. I'm only about 50, Uraraka said. Plenty light enough for a hop to the roof, Izuku confirmed. As soon as the match starts, I'm going to carry you to the roof. From there, we'll enter from the roof access. I'll probably be able to hear where Ida and Bakugo are once we get in the building. What do you want me to do? She asked. Izuku had to think for a moment. If we somehow manage to run into Bakugo, as unlikely as it is, I'll have to be the one to fight. Bakugo will ignore you. But if we don't run into him, I'll distract Ida and you grab the bomb. Sound good? Yes. Let's do this. Everything went according to plan. They entered from the roof access. Ida was 1 floor below them, monologuing to himself, and Izuku could hear Bakugo stomping around on the 1st floor, screaming for Izuku to come out and fight him. Uraraka and Izuku silently crept to the room Ida was in with the bomb, and with a shared look, Uraraka ran to the bomb as Izuku intercepted Ida's mad dash to stop her. Seconds later, All Might's voice called out that the hero team won. But of course, no interaction with Bakugo could ever go that smoothly. As they were on their way down the stairs, they ran into Bakugo who had stomped his way up. Deku, how the f did you get past? Me? I flew, Izuku answered simply. With my wings, he added as he spread them a little. Useless freak, that's cheating. You were supposed to enter from the front door, he screamed. The rules simply stated the hero team needed to enter the building, Ida tried to reason. The rules never stated how they had to enter. As Bakugo growled at them, Uraraka said, "Let's head back. I want to see how the other teams fight." They all started heading down the stairs, Ida and Uraraka in the lead chatting happily, with Izuku close behind them. "Don't if you ignore me," Bakugo hissed. Looking over his shoulder, turning his head around a full 180 degrees like an owl would, Izuku deadpanned, "We're not ignoring you, we're done with the exercise." "Don't you talk to me like that, you freak!" Bakugo shouted and ran up to Izuku with both hands primed up for explosions. Izuku dodged out of the way and ducked out of the stairwell and into the second floor. "Bakugo, what are you doing?" "The match is over," he asked the insane teen. "The match is over when you're dead, Deku," he retorted. Izuku stopped running and turned to Bakugo. "Don't call me Deku. If you're not going to call me by my name, then call me Screech, but not Deku." Bakugo's response was his signature right hook, that Izuku grabbed and threw over his shoulder, while both Uraraka and Ida called for Bakugo to stop attacking. Bakugo got up and went to attack Izuku again, and when it became clear that Bakugo wasn't going to stop, Izuku pulled out his staff, and with a sigh of resignation, got into a defensive stance. "Bakugo, you will stop this immediately," All Might's voice called out over the intercoms, which Bakugo promptly ignored. "If you continue this, you will be given detention." Bakugo continued to ignore All Might and pressed his attacks on Izuku, who had managed to dodge and block all of the explosions so far, much to Bakugo's mounting frustration. "I can do this all day, Bakugo," Izuku said. "But you really should stop. You're already about to get detention." Bakugo growled and backed up a few steps. "You know how my quirk works, right, Deku? Well, if these gauntlets were designed how I wanted them to be, they've been collecting my sweat for a good while now." Bakugo leveled a twisted smirk at Izuku. "Let's see you handle this." They could hear All Might yelling at Bakugo to stop, but that didn't even make Bakugo slow down in pulling the pin on his gauntlets. Izuku only had a few seconds to think, and he realized that both Ida and Uraraka were behind him, and if he dodged, then they would be the ones to take the hit. Izuku didn't have much of a choice. He took a deep breath and let loose a screech slightly more powerful than the one from the quirk assessment. His thinking proved to be accurate, and his screech canceled out the explosion, keeping himself and his two classmates behind him safe from the huge explosion. However, he had miscalculated a little and had put too much force into the screech. Bakugo had been blasted back, thrown into and through two walls, including the outer wall of the building. Izuku darted forward, hoping that he hadn't hurt Bakugo too badly, and when he looked out the wall to the ground below, he saw the explosive teen starting to shakily stand. Izuku breathed a sigh of relief. He hadn't killed his former friend. Hitoshi had been watching along with the rest of the class, and when it became apparent that the situation was not going to be resolved quickly or easily by All Might, Hitoshi had sent his dad a text that there was a problem at the training grounds. His dad has replied that he was on his way. So now Hitoshi was watching with the class as Bakugo attacked Izuku, and as Izuku easily held his own. Hitoshi was extremely impressed, as those were all moves he had learned from Dad over the past few months, and his brother was killing it. He moved like that staff was an extension of his own body, and not just a big stick he had been handed 3 months ago and wished the best of luck. As he was watching, Hitoshi realized something. He wasn't watching Midoriya Izuku fighting. He wasn't watching the boy he sparred with constantly. His moves were more fluid, more precise. The boy on the screen was not his brother. That was the experienced vigilante Screech. This is what Izuku meant when he said that Screech was a different person, when he said he was confident as Screech. Screech was using moves he'd never seen his brother use in any of their previous sparring matches. He was fighting in a way that, while based on moves Dad had taught, were completely new, as if tailored to this fight with Bakugo. His wings constantly fluttered, adding speed to his movements and distracting his opponent, while his staff kept the attacks away from himself. And then as he watched, Bakugo stepped back, said something, and Izuku's face paled. Whatever was about to happen next, it was going to be big. Bakugo pulled the pin on his gauntlet, and Izuku let loose a massive screech, one so loud that everyone in the observation room could hear it, even though the cameras didn't have audio. They watched as Bakugo's explosion was stopped, and as the force of the sound wave threw him into and through the walls and outside the building. "Holy shit," Kaminari whispered, breaking Hitoshi out of his stupor. "Midoriya is so manly," Kirishima exclaimed, "but man, Bakugo, that was not cool." As the rest of the class talked amongst themselves, and All Might ran out to see what he could salvage of the situation, while Hitoshi saw his dad arrive at the scene as well. Shudo leaned into Hitoshi. "I don't think you guys ever told me Izuku was Screech." Hitoshi raised an eyebrow at Shudo. "You know who Screech is?" Shudo nodded. "Father has been trying to capture him for the better part of 2 years. I have to hear him complain about him nearly every week. Dad has been talking about him for the past 3 years. Me and Pops already felt like we knew him before we ever met." Hitoshi laid his head against Shudo's shoulder. "I've never seen him in action though." "I thought you spar with him every few days?" Shudo asked, leaning his head against Hitoshi's. "I spar with Midoriya Izuku. That fight just now? That wasn't my brother. That was Screech." Shoyuta was both set off and impressed. Set off because he had seen the video footage, and he knew that Bakugo attacked without provocation, and since his version of the footage had audio, he heard Izuku and his other classmates try to de-escalate the situation. Impressed because holy shit, Izuku had been holding back in his sparring matches. Shoyuta had never seen Screech in action. He had heard his screeches before, seen the aftermath of his fights, watched him fly away, but never had he seen him in action. He had assumed that the training matches with Izuku and Hitoshi was the extent of what the boy could do, but no. He was so much more than he had ever seen from him. But back to what he was doing. Shoyuta clicked his pen and started filling out Bakugo's expulsion papers. He refused to have a student in his class who attacked a classmate after an exercise was completed just because he was being ignored. "Hey Dad," Hitoshi said as he walked into the kitchen and got a glass of water. "Is that the footage of Aiza's match?" "No. It's the footage of the attack after the match." "Screech is a beast, huh? I thought I knew what Izuku could do, but I was wrong." Hitoshi downed half the glass. "We gotta find a way to get him to do that in practice matches." Shoyuta nodded. "Maybe without the actual screeching though." "Nah, we got the noise-canceling headphones, we'll be fine," Hitoshi joked. With a raised eyebrow, Shoyuta joked, "Oh yeah, noise-canceling headphones will totally stop a sound wave strong enough to throw someone out a few walls." Hitoshi rubbed the back of his neck. "Ah, yeah, guess I was thinking of Papa's quirk there for a second." "He's at least as powerful as Zashi is," Shoyuta stated. "Not as versatile, but that's only a part of his quirk, not the main thing." Hitoshi finished his glass of water and went to wash his glass. "After watching that one-sided beatdown, I can't believe I ever managed to beat him." "I told you so," came a whisper from just outside the kitchen. "Sheet, Zuku, I'm gonna put a bell on you," Hitoshi exclaimed, glad he had already put up his glass. He would have dropped it. Izuku huffed out a little laugh, and walked up to Shoyuta and leaned against him. "Can I watch it?" "You were in it, why do you need to watch it?" Shoyuta asked. Izuku shrugged. "I've never seen myself fight before. And I know I slipped into my Screech persona. I want to give Kigo a play-by-play next time I go flying with him. I suppose you can see the fight. But it'd probably be easier to just play this for Kigo when he comes over next time." Shoyuta reached up and scratched Izuku's head, causing him to chirp softly and nuzzle his head closer to Shuta's hand. Shoyuta replayed the video for his new son. "Whoa," Izuku whispered. "I didn't know I was that good. You could probably beat Shudo in a match if you went all out like that." Hitoshi had walked up to Izuku and had his arm resting on his shoulder. "By the way, Sho knows your Screech. Apparently Endeavor has been trying to catch you for about 2 years." "Yeah, he's loud as F and easy to avoid," Izuku muttered absently. "I almost wish I was a real bird sometimes so I could cheat on him whenever he's trying to find me." Izuku and Hitoshi were standing at the window in their classroom, staring in open horror as the crowd of reporters just kept growing. "I don't think I have ever been so glad as I am now that Dad is underground and Papa doesn't change into his present Mike get-up until he gets to school." "Seriously," Izuku agreed softly. "Can you imagine if we had to walk in with present Mike in all his extroverted glory?" The two boys shuddered in unison. "I hope the rest of the class can manage to get in okay." It's almost a shame Shoyuta expelled Bakugu. He'd probably explode at the crowd and scare them enough to make them run away. Izuku laughed softly. The two pointed out their classmates as they attempted to get past the press and laughed when Izuku noticed that Shoyuta had joined the fray to help the students get past the press frenzy. Ida was the first person to enter the class. He had managed to just steamroll past the reporters, most likely due to being a legacy kid himself and having had to deal with press before. "Shinso Midoriya, how did the both of you get here so early?" he asked. Hitoshi snorted and glanced at Izuku, almost as if he was saying, "Just play along," before turning back to Ida. "It's almost as if you've forgotten Zuku can fly. If he can easily hop a building with you, Raraka, don't you think he can hop a wall with me?" "Ah, yes, my mistake," Ida apologized. "I should have realized you could fly over. Wait a second, that would be unauthorized quirk usage. Should the teachers find out about that, you could be punished, possibly even expelled. I cannot approve of dash." At that, both Hitoshi and Izuku lost the battle to remain stoic and started giggling. "Relax, Ida, my dad took us in the back entrance earlier this morning," Hitoshi said in between laughs. Izuku nodded and hesitantly added, "I've been warned against unauthorized quirk usage already. I don't want to ruin the chance I was given. Besides, I'm scheduled to take a test next week to get a flight permission license." "Oh really? Next week?" Hitoshi asked. "I didn't think you were getting it that soon." Izuku nodded. "Kei and Zashi are pulling strings for me, and it'll be a limited-use license, mainly for night flights, but it'd mean I could hop the gates if I wanted." "That's awesome. I wish I could go flying with you and Kei once, just to know what it's like," Hitoshi mused. Izuku laughed a bit at that. "Toshi, you're too heavy for a real flight. I could do a quick flight, but even then, I wouldn't be able to do anything really fun." He shrugged and continued, "You do know that I only weigh about 30 kilos, right?" "Demon hollow bird bones," was Hitoshi's muttered reply. The two of them were still watching out the window at the press circus, but they still heard Shudo come up next to them. "Morning." Hitoshi turned to his boyfriend and gave him a quick kiss. "Morning, Sho. Did you make it through the mess out there okay?" "Michim. I have long since learned how to handle crowds like that." Shudo turned fully towards them and gave his best, "You're not worthy of breathing the same air as me," look, lasting for about 5 seconds before he broke it, returning to his soft smile. "Dad's not good for much, but he did make sure all of us knew how to intimidate the press." That. Izuku had to restart his brain. That expression on Shudo's face was just wrong. "As effective as that was," Hitoshi said, "I don't like that look on your face." "Me neither," Shudo shrugged. "I literally only use it to scare off the press. It reminds them that I'm still Endeavor's son, regardless of how I feel about that." Izuku glanced back at the crowd as Hitoshi linked his arm with Shudo. "Looks like Sensei's about to head up to class. Probably only have about 3 minutes at most before he gets here." At the others' nods, Izuku went to his desk. He didn't have to wait long. Shoyuta came in about 2 minutes later and started class. They were going to be picking class representatives today. They decided to pick their class reps through a vote, and Izuku stared in horror as he saw he had 4 votes, and Hitoshi had 3. "No," came Hitoshi's reply. "Thanks for the votes, but no." "Yeah, same here," Izuku agreed. "Ah, but come on man," Kirishima said. "If you guys got voted in as the class reps, then it's your job." "Yeah." Kaminari and Ashido chimed in. "I will fight you all," Hitoshi deadpanned. "Actually, Dad, permission to take them all out back and throw them repeatedly into a brick wall?" "You'll have to settle for a cement wall. He doesn't have any brick walls," Shoyuta answered just as deadpan. "You heard him. Guys, anyone who refuses to let me pass on this duty, meet me out back." Izuku snorted, adding, "Can you take the ones who won't let me pass too? I think it's bad form to drop people from a few floors up." "Sure thing. Come on, either redo the vote, or suffer the consequences." "It occurs to me," Azui commented, "that people threatening bodily harm to those who voted for them are probably not the best picks for class rep." Both Izuku and Hitoshi nodded and pointed at Azui. The class took a second vote, and this time both Hitoshi and Izuku had 0 votes, while Yaoyorozu had 4 and Ida 3. I can't believe you, Sho, the absolute betrayal. How could you? Hitoshi dramatically cried, draping himself on Izuku with a hand out, pushing away his boyfriend. I stand by my decision, Shudo said unapologetically. I almost did it a second time, too. Traitor! Hitoshi hissed at him like a cat. Yaoyorozu took that moment to slip into the booth across from Izuku with her lunch tray loaded with a double helping of rice and chicken. What are they being dramatic about now? She asked Izuku. Oh, Shudo voted for Toshi to be class rep. Toshi took offense to that, he snorted. I see. Would now be a bad time to state I was one of the other votes? Yaoyorozu teased Hitoshi. I'm surrounded by traitors. Turning to Izuku, Toshi demanded, who did you vote for? Not you, don't worry. I actually thought that the way Ida and Yaoyorozu took charge of the voting process was really leadership-worthy, so I voted for Yaoyorozu. Thank God, at least my brother knows better than to vote for me. And I didn't vote for you either. My vote went to Yaoyorozu for the same reasons, he added. Hitoshi, how many times do I have to tell you to call me Momo? And now you too, Midoriya-kun. Yaoyorozu is too long for casual conversation. She smiled and took a bite of her lunch. Okay, Momo-kun. In that case, please call me Izuku? I actually prefer it to Midoriya, anyway, Izuku admitted. Okay, thank you for letting me know. I am thinking of starting a class group chat. Do you want me to include that information for everyone to know? That's okay. I can tell them in the group chat when it gets created, Izuku mumbled. When Hitoshi elbowed him in the ribs, Izuku repeated, I can tell them, you don't have to. Better, Hitoshi said and finally started in on his lunch. The four of them continued with their lunch and conversation until a sudden, loud alarm started blaring. The other three started to evacuate as the alarm said to do, with Momo dashing off to try to organize the mess the students had become, but Izuku had collapsed in pain, clutching at his ears, trying with all his might to block out the sound. Hitoshi and Shudo dropped next to him, trying to help him, but not knowing how. Izuku was crying, just barely keeping himself from screaming in pain, and Hitoshi could see blood starting to drip from his ears. Sheet, he directed towards Shudo. I thought his quirk was transformative, not mutation? Shudo shrugged, and placed his own hands over Izuku's, and then covered them in ice, trying to muffle the sounds of the alarm as best he could. He does have hollow bird bones, right? I think we should just be grateful he's not screeching right now. Hitoshi hugged Izuku and a few moments later, Izuku passed out, still bleeding from the ears. Izuku woke up to what sounded like muffled speaking, and he remembered the alarm that had been blaring in the cafeteria during lunch. Wincing, he reached up to feel his ears, hoping to all that was holy that there was something covering his ears and that he hadn't suffered from hearing loss. How pathetic would that be, a deaf owl? Thankfully, there were indeed bandages over both ears, so there was slight hope for him that his hearing wasn't going to be affected long-term. Zuku? Huh, that sounded like it could be Hisashi. Was it Hisashi? Maybe he should open his eyes, that might help in identifying who was talking. Yup, it was Hisashi. Hey, Izuku whispered to him. Wow, or did he? Izuku scowled. He couldn't hear himself at all. I'm deaf now, aren't I? He hummed. Hisashi laughed a little at that. No, you're going to be just fine, he comforted Izuku. The bandages are pretty thick, I doubt anyone else would be able to hear through those at all, so the fact that you can just shows you're going to be fine. Oh, thanks. Izuku felt the bandages on his ears again, wondering how long he'd have to have them. Out of the corner of his eye, Izuku saw Shoyuta and Recovery Girl walking towards them. I'm going to check these bandages, Recovery Girl said. I'll put new ones on if needed, but you should be good to have them completely off by now. Izuku nodded. I have a question, Shoyuta stated. Hitoshi brought it up earlier, and I need the clarification too. I thought your quirk was transformative, but this seems like a mutation. Oh, sort of. Izuku paused as Recovery Girl looked in his ear, muttered about how it looked good, and walked back to her desk to do some paperwork. My hearing and eyesight, I guess, are both enhanced at all times? I can consciously change if my vision is day or night, though. And of course, I have hollow bones too. And your hearing? Is it always cranked up that much? Shoyuta asked. Well, no. I mean, it's always better than a normal person's hearing, but I can make it even sharper. If I really focus, I can pick out individual people's heartbeats from an adjacent apartment. Do you have any mutations that protect your ears from loud noises? With a screech like yours, I would assume you would be deaf by now otherwise, Hizashi pointed out. After all, you know I am. Izuku shrugged. I'm not sure? Maybe? Loud quirk-related noises don't bother me, only normal loud noises. Like, Bakuga's explosions are his quirk, so they never really hurt my ears, and same for my screech and your voice. Izuku winced. I was in town once when you let loose on a villain. You were loud, but I think I was the only one there that day that didn't have ringing ears afterwards. Continuing, Izuku said, and I'm okay, normally, so long as noises don't get above a certain volume or frequency. Police sirens are really close to the limit I can really handle, so I don't like to stay around when they have their sirens on, but the alarms today were just too loud and too high frequency. Izuku finished in a whisper, rubbing his ears at the memory, even though they no longer hurt. We'll need to see about getting some ear protectors put into your hero costume visor, Shoyuta added. I think Kigo has something like that in his, so it shouldn't be difficult to have it added to yours. Something like that in my headphones too, Hizashi added. Proper ear protection is essential. Izuku nodded. Why did the intruder alarms go off, anyways? Freaking vultures. The press broke through the barriers and set off all of the alarms. Izuku was glad that by the time he woke up in the morning the slight ringing that had been plaguing his ears since the alarm the day before was gone. He shuffled out to the kitchen and was greeted by the sight of Hizashi and Shoyuta leaning against each other, sipping their coffee. Hey there, Zu, sleep okay? Hizashi asked. Yeah. The ringing is finally gone too. He got a mug and started to pour himself a cup of coffee. That's good. I'm about to make breakfast. Do you want eggs or fish? Hizashi finished his coffee and started the machine for a second pot. Neither, I think I'll just have some toast please. Izuku sat at the table while Hizashi started cooking, not wanting to be in his way, and Shoyuta joined him moments later. Izuku loved watching Hizashi in the kitchen. That man was a force to be reckoned with. He was so talented with everything he did, from his hero work, to teaching, to quirk counseling, his radio show, and now cooking. This life here is too good to be true. This won't last. Izuku closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Not now. Why do those thoughts always have to show up when he's happy? He felt a slight touch on his hand and opened his eyes to see Shoyuta had touched him and was looking at him with concern deep in his eyes. You okay, Zu? Izuku smiled a small smile. Yeah, I'm okay. Thanks. Shoyuta gently patted his hand and retreated back to his side of the table and finished his coffee, and Izuku heard Hitoshi stumbling down the hallway, still half asleep. Izuku snorted as Hitoshi nearly tripped over his own feet as he turned the corner, only prevented from falling on his face by the quick reflexes of Hizashi, who caught him just as he started to tip. Hizashi pressed a quick kiss to Hitoshi's forehead and let out a sweet, musical hum that Izuku could feel all the way into his soul. The sound was almost like Hizashi's personal wake-up song. The frequency and pitch combined perfectly and resonated with the bodies of whoever heard it and was able to help jumpstart them into a state of alertness. It didn't last too long but was definitely long enough to get a mug of coffee pressed into Hitoshi's hands and directed to the table. Thanks, Papa. Anytime, kiddo. Fish or eggs? Hizashi asked. Yes. Both it is, Hizashi agreed with a laugh. Zuku, you sure you only want toast? I suppose I can eat a little bit? Eggs, I guess? Hizashi beamed at him. Great. I know you have a big day ahead of you. Shoyuta had let the boys know the night before that they were going to be going on a trip during heroics class today, and they were both excited. Izuku knew he was good at fighting and information gathering, but he'd never really had the chance to practice rescue. And while his preferred career path wouldn't have much rescue to it, there was always the chance that he could need rescue training. Hitoshi was much the same. He knew he'd need to learn fire rescue and maybe collapsed building rescue, but the rest would just be good to know for a random what if on the rare occasion they might decide to go on vacation to who knows where. A few minutes later and breakfast was on the table, and Izuku was once again in awe of Hisashi's cooking. What he wouldn't do to be a real part of this family. Izuku had been living with them for nearly 3 months now, and he had never been happier. But he knew this would never last. Sooner or later, they'd decide to give him up, right? He was just here because he had to have a hero watch over him for the vigilante reform program, and Eraserhead was the hero who got him to turn himself in. They didn't actually want him. Zuzu bird, I can see something dark swirling behind your eyes, Hisashi muttered worriedly. You want to talk it out? Izuku blinked up at Hisashi, not realizing his emotions had been so obvious. And oh no, I'm okay. He smiled softly. Just thinking about things. Okay baby, if you're sure. When Izuku nodded, Hisashi smiled himself. Okay, if we're all done with breakfast, let's get ready to head out. Izuku was tracing the seams on his gloves as the bus was heading towards the USJ when he felt eyes on him and looked up to see Azui, Tsu, she wanted to be called Tsu, looking over at him. Midoriya, I have a tendency to speak my mind, Ribbit, and I have a question for you. It's something I noticed the other day, she asked, her tongue sticking out slightly. Go ahead? Izuku hesitantly allowed. While watching your battle trial, I couldn't help to compare you to a vigilante I've heard about. Ribbit, are you Screech? The blunt question caught most of the class off guard, and all conversation stopped. Izuku wasn't sure if he was allowed to answer the question, but from where he was looking at Tsu, he could see Shoyuta nod his head and heard him whisper, it's up to you if you want to tell them. So Izuku took a deep breath and said, yeah, I'm Screech. I've been a vigilante for about 3 years, but my dream had always been to be a real hero. No way, Midobro, you're really Screech? That's so manly. Kirishima gushed with a huge grin. Forgive my ignorance, Ida spoke up from the other side of the aisle, but wouldn't vigilantism prevent you from obtaining a hero license? Yes and no? Izuku shrugged. My circumstances were such that I'm being given a second chance of sorts. I'm in a vigilante reform program, and so long as the hero monitoring me signs off on my actions during certain monthly checkpoints, the vigilantism won't mar my record. That's pretty cool, Uraraka exclaimed. So that's how you were able to do so well in the exercise the other day? Izuku blushed a bit and nodded. Yadash. We're here, Shoyuta called from the front of the bus. Everyone off. Izuku sighed in relief and hurried off, passing Kaminari who was staring at him with huge starry eyes. He's so cool, Kaminari whispered. Izuku didn't pay any attention to him, instead gathering around 13 with the rest of the class. He perked up when he heard Shoyuta ask them where All Might was, and they said something about a time limit. Okay class, 13 called for their attention. Welcome to the Unforeseen Simulation Joint, or as some call it, the USJ. Before we get started, 13 continued to talk, but Izuku found his attention drifting. He really didn't need to pay attention to a lecture about quirk safety. He had full control of his quirk, and he knew how dangerous his quirk could be. It would be so easy to deal lethal damage. It was why he almost never went above a quarter of his full power. Heck, even when he blasted Bakugo the other day, he was only at about a third of his full power. As he was looking around, he caught Kaminari staring at him, and he blinked. Why was Kaminari staring at him? Did he have something on his face? He blushed when Kaminari winked at him and then turned back to 13's lecture. Hitoshi? Izuku muttered, nudging his sorta brother in the side. Why does Kaminari keep looking at me like that? Hitoshi looked over to Kaminari in time to see him shoot another glance to the green-haired boy. Oh, Aizu, I love you, but you are one of the densest people I've ever met. What do you mean? Izuku furrowed his eyebrows and tilted his head when Shudo leaned his head against Hitoshi's shoulder. No, seriously, what do you mean? Shudo snickered and muttered to Hitoshi, I tried. Izuku flicked his gaze between the two of them and tilted his head almost completely upside down in confusion. I don't get it. Both Hitoshi and Shudo blinked at Izuku. They had never seen him turn his head upside down like that, and it was unnerving. Before they could say anything about it, though, Izuku's head snapped back upright, and his pupils dilated as he stared at something a bit in the distance. Izuku snapped out his wings and hopped quickly over to Shoyuta and chirped, gesturing to the plaza below. A dark purple rift was opening in the plaza, and as it got bigger, it started pouring people out. Dozens of people emerged. Izuku stopped counting at 50, but there were still more. As the kids behind them became confused about what was happening, Shoyuta called to them, "Stay together, this is not part of the exercise, those are real villains." 13, get the kids out of here. At the plaza, Izuku could hear the one with the light blue hair getting irritated at the fact that All Might wasn't there, that he had come to kill All Might, and how was he supposed to fulfill his mission of killing All Might if he wasn't there? Izuku hissed at him when he said something about killing kids to bring All Might there. Turning back to Izuku, Shoyuta said, "You too, get to safety." He reached for his goggles, only to be stopped by Izuku grabbing his arm. "Eraser, your fighting style is one-on-one ambushing. This is not going to play to your strengths," Izuku pointed out. "Kid, you can't be a hero if you've only got one trick," he countered. "That's not what I'm saying," Izuku replied. "What I'm saying is this isn't your strength. But it is mine. I'll take them, you help the other kids." "Izuki, you're a student too, you need to get out of here." "I've been a vigilante for 3 years, Eraser." "What the F makes you think I'm going to start following orders now?" Screech, because he was not Izuku right now, winked playfully at Shoyuta. "Stay out of my way, Eraser." And with that, Screech rolled his shoulders and jumped, spreading his wings wide. He surveyed the villains and took note with amusement that they were bunched up. "Perfect." Screech took a deep breath and unleashed his signature attack, starting at one side of the group of villains and moving to the other, the pure force of his voice pushing them down to their knees. The purple mist villain had disappeared, but the rest were still there, and Screech was not going to let them hurt any of the kids while he was on duty. Seeing some of them starting to collect themselves again, he unleashed his attack again, rendering most of them unconscious. The blue-haired villain with the multiple hands over his body had managed to stay standing, as well as a hulking beast of a man with an exposed brain that just screamed "weak point" to Screech. After one last look around the gathered group of villains, Screech narrowed his eyes at the last 2 people standing and landed. "Nomu," the villain hissed out. "Kill the bird." The hulking person, Nomu, screamed and launched at Screech, only to be stopped dead in its tracks by another Screech that surprisingly didn't push the person back. "Ah," the villain exclaimed. "Do you like my pet? He's got super strength, super speed. You can't stop him with a little screaming. He was bioengineered to kill All Might. What do you think some stupid little kid like you can do against my Nomo?" He started cackling, filled with an insane glee. "Fine," Screech thought to himself. "Time to take off the kitty gloves." Screech upped the power behind the next attack from about 30% to about 50%, and he could see the creature's limbs get crushed by the sheer force of the sound waves, until the creature lost its footing and flew backwards, into what looked like the side of a mountain. "No. What are you doing to my Nomu?" the villain shrieked at him. "You cheater! You aren't allowed to hurl sound waves at Nomu." Screech turned to the blue-haired villain. "Well, I can always start hurling more sound waves at you if you'd prefer." The purple mist guy portaled back to the blue guy's side. "Shigaraki Tamura, I was able to disperse the students throughout the facility, however one student managed to escape. Kurogyri, if you weren't our ticket out of here, I would kill you where you stand." Apparently, the guy's name was Shigaraki Tamura. "We should retreat," Kurogyri said. "It seems the Nomu master supplied you with is not able to defeat this bird child." "He's not dead yet," Shigaraki grinned, and Screech would have been unnerved by that if he hadn't already heard the creature stirring from where he had been buried in rubble. "So, 50 isn't good enough," he thought to himself. Narrowing his eyes, he saw that parts of the creature that had been crushed was mending before his eyes. "Super regeneration too, looks like." Screech focused on his hearing for a moment, trying to pick out where the rest of the class was, since the Kurogyri guy said he had dispersed them, and was dismayed to hear that they were indeed spread throughout the facility. He needed to finish this quickly, or some could finish their fights and try to help him here. He didn't know what he'd do if Hitoshi or Shudo tried to help with this. They'd get themselves seriously hurt. Refocusing on the Nomu, Screech decided to do the one thing he hated most. He was going to unleash his Screech at full power at the creature. He closed his eyes briefly, took a deep breath, silently apologized to the hulking beast that was sprinting back at him, and let loose his Screech in the most narrow, powerful cone he could. And the creature not only stopped in its tracks, but its whole body started vibrating, his Screech hitting at the same frequency as the creature. He could see the regeneration working over time, trying to keep the creature's body in one piece. Screech gave it a 3-second reprieve as he took another deep breath and then continued the assault. This time, though, the beast's regeneration failed it exploded in a shower of gore and bits flying everywhere, covering Screech. Pushing down the urge to vomit all over the ground, Izuku turned to the last two villains and raised an eyebrow. "Portal," Shigaraki whispered. "Open a portal, get us out of here." As soon as the villains were gone, Izuku lost his battle with his stomach and hurled the contents all over the ground. Shoyuta felt as if his world had shifted just a few inches to the left. He was off-center. The adorable boy he had let into his heart and home, the vigilante who he had thought he had known the full extent of his skills, had not only been holding back the whole time, but had been just barely showing his true abilities. Shoyuta had thought he was as powerful as Hizashi was, but he was wrong. Oh gods, was he wrong. When Screech had cheekily told him to stay out of his way, Shoyuta had been annoyed, but was willing to admit to himself that the battle in the plaza really would be out of his comfort zone, and he trusted Screech's abilities. And so, he decided to follow through with his bird son's suggestion. He really did need to have a talk with his students on proper protocol, though, because when the villain Maid of Mist showed up, both Satu and Kirishima charged in to fight him, blocking his line of sight and enabling the villain to create portals that scattered the students to various parts of the facility. Fortunately, Ida Tenya was able to make it out of the building and raced to alert the rest of the school to the attack. By the time the rest of the teachers arrived, though, Ashido, Uraraka, and Shoji had already borne witness to the devastating power that was their classmate. They watched him screech at the villain multiple times, watched as the creature's limbs were crushed by the force of the sound waves, watched as his screech vibrated the creature's very cells, causing it to explode, showering the entire plaza in blood and gore. They witnessed as Midoriya Izuku emptied his stomach on the ground and broke down into tears, deep, heart-rending sobs, collapsing to his knees and hugging himself with everything he was worth, wrapping himself in his own wings to try to shield himself from anyone else witnessing the aftermath of his most powerful attack. Shoyuta knew he would need to keep an eye on Izuku tonight. He probably shouldn't be left alone for more than a few minutes at any given moment. The rest of the students were ushered out of the facility before Izuku finally managed to unfurl his wings. Looking around, Izuku listlessly walked to the lake. "Zuku, where are you going?" Shoyuta asked. Instead of a real reply, Izuku hooted softly, and then knelt next to the water and started splashing himself, rinsing off the blood and gore. He kept splashing and the water kept running red. The more he splashed, the more desperate he got, until he just dived into the water and started scrubbing at every single spot of red he saw. Even when his own skin turned red, he kept scrubbing. When he reached for his wings to start pulling out bloody feathers, Shoyuta erased his quirk, causing his wings to disappear. Shortly after his freak out at the lake, Izuku passed out. Shoyuta was very glad in that moment that Izuku had hollow bird bones, since the only other person he'd trust to carry his bird son was Hizashi, who had been busy being a mother hen over Hitoshi and Todoroki, trusting that Shoyuta would take care of Izuku, and had left with the rest of the staff and students. Shoyuta waved off the last medic, knowing that Izuku didn't have any injuries from the fight, and that he wouldn't appreciate being touched by anyone else right now even if he did have injuries. Izuku jolted awake silently, tears streaming down his face. He had seen the monster exploding again in his dream, but this time he couldn't stop. He had turned to the others in the facility and exploded the man with the blue hair. Then he turned around and exploded Hitoshi, Shuto, and even Shoyuta. Izuku sat up in his bed and gripped himself tightly. "You know it's only a matter of time before you kill them too." "No, I won't," he whispered to himself. "You didn't think you'd kill him either. But you did. I won't kill Hitoshi, or Shuto, or Shoyuta. I won't." Voice was shaking, cracking. If you stay here you will. Izuku's grip on himself tightened. He looked up suddenly when he heard a toilet flush in the hallway and the faucet turn on. Leave now before you kill someone else. Unless you really do want to kill the nice family that has taken in a pathetic, stupid, worthless Deku like you. Izuku got out of his bed, briefly noticed there was a chair in his room with a yellow sleeping bag on the floor next to it, and he opened his window. As he jumped out, he heard Shura's voice calling out to him to come back, but Izuku just flew faster, quickly disappearing from sight. What do you mean he flew off? Kigo exclaimed. Shoyuda had called him, right after he yelled for Hizashi to get up and start searching for Izuku. That's just what I said, bird brain. Shoyuda grumbled. I took 3 minutes to use the bathroom while he was asleep, and he must have woken up in that time and flew out the window. Right. Where did he go? If I knew that, I wouldn't be telling you to help me look. Shoyuda yelled. I don't know where my son is, and you need to help me find him. Kigo sighed over the phone. Yeah, I got that. I meant what direction am I starting from? Did he go east, west, north? I don't want to start looking south just for him to be found way to the north. Shoyuda ran his hands through his hair. He went east. Hizashi took the northeast, and I'm taking straight east. You take southeast. Understood. I'll call if I find him. Kigo hung up. Shoyuda kept running across the rooftops, searching for his son. Izuku had stopped flying. He didn't know exactly where he was, but it didn't really matter. Nothing mattered anymore. He had disobeyed orders when he fought those villains. He had engaged in combat, used his quirk against the direct orders of a pro-hero. And not just any pro-hero, but against the direct orders of Eraserhead. Izuku sniffled in despair. He was going to be kicked out of school now, expelled. He would be sent to jail for vigilantism. He was going to be abandoned, lose the family he was just starting to feel safe with. Izuku let his tears fall. They only took you in to get you to stop. You broke their trust. I know, he cried. You never deserved their affection. I know, he whispered again. There's only one thing left for you to do. I know. Izuku looked up at the sky, wanting to see it one last time. He couldn't jump. After all the times before that he's tried, he knows that won't work. Looking at his hands, he extended his talons. That could work. Izuku pulled up his sleeves and touched his talons to his skin. Do it. End it. He pressed his talons a little harder into his skin, drawing a single drop of blood, and paused. Did he really want to do this? No one would miss you. Izuku closed his eyes and saw in his mind's eye Shoyuda, sitting with him, watching cat videos while playing with his curls. The lessons with Hizashi, where he tells Izuku various methods to help with his self-confidence and gives him the best and warmest hugs. Owl Cafe visits with Hitoshi, midnight talks about past trauma. Flying with Kigo, playing aerial tag, and talking about how great it is being a burb, and making weekly promises to live just one more week. Izuku lifted his talon from his skin, leaving only a tiny pinprick of blood. He couldn't do it. He promised Kigo. He promised. Izuku wrapped his arms around himself and let out heart-rending sobs. What am I going to do now? He cried. I see, can't you go back? Why not? Izuku hissed in surprise and turned around. Hizashi was slowly walking towards Izuku. Why can't you come back? I just can't, he replied brokenly. I killed him. Am a villain now. No baby, you're not a villain. Hizashi pulled Izuku into his arms and kissed his forehead. Baby, you were just protecting the rest of your class. You were protecting Shoyuda. That's the furthest thing from a villain. But I killed him. Let me let you in on a secret, Hizashi whispered as he held Izuku tightly. While we try our very best not to, even us heroes have killed people. Izuku hiccuped and looked up at Hizashi. Really? Hizashi pulled Izuku into his lap as he sat down and nodded sadly. Yeah. Especially those of us with really powerful quirks. Hizashi ran his fingers through Izuku's hair, and as Izuku was crying, he started humming. It was a gentle sound, light and soothing, a sound that Izuku could feel deep in his bones and soul. The sound was like a balm to his aching heart, and he held on to Hizashi with everything that he was, everything he had. He knew he'd be leaving bruises on his arms, but he couldn't let him go. He needed this, he needed to be held, he needed his papa. Izuku wanted Hisashi to be his papa, he wanted what Hitoshi had, he wanted a dad and a papa, he wanted a brother, he wanted a real family. And for this moment, being held by Hisashi, being hummed to by Hisashi, he could pretend, just for now, that he had a family. Hisashi could feel his baby bird's sobs turn from despair to hope, just like he had intended. His quirk, after all, was voice, not shout. He had found, after years of experimentation and with a lot of concentration, that various sounds could affect a person's moods, depending on the hertz and frequency he uses, from alertness to sadness, happiness, hopeful, hopeless, and he could even help to TarynMcT healing. Tonight his baby needed a little extra hope. Hope that things will be okay, that whatever it was that made him break down, he has the ability to overcome it. He is not alone, Hisashi will be there for him. Shoyuta will be there for him. Hitoshi will be there for him. Even Kigo will be there for him. As Hisashi felt Izuku's sobs peter out, he planted another kiss to the deep green curls. Baby bird, are you okay to talk to me about what happened? Or do you want me to keep humming? Izuku sniffed a little and pulled back slightly. Are you using your Quirk just now? He whispered. I was just. And if you need me to keep going, I will. Okay. Izuku hesitated for another moment. I'll tell you, beep. Can you keep humming? Please? Hisashi smiled at him softly and nodded. Of course I can, my sweet little owl. As Hisashi started humming again, Izuku spoke. I don't want to go to jail, but I disobeyed orders. I know Shoyuta could have handled things. He's amazing. He's better than I'll ever be. But I knew that disobeying would get me expelled. I knew and I did it anyways. Izuku buried his face back into Hisashi's chest, but he kept talking. So Hisashi kept humming. I killed him. I knew he was going to die, and I kept G going. I started at a normal L level, but he was only just barely halted. So I went to half P power. He C could regenerate. My S screech is crushing his limbs, but he kept healing. I C could have stopped, I could have, C could have, I don't know what else I C could have done. Hisashi laid his cheek against Izuku's hair. Sweetie, Hisashi breathed, while yes, you could have stopped, from what I've heard of the attack, that creature wouldn't have stopped. You did what you had to. No one is upset with you, you're not going to be expelled. You're not going to be arrested. I promise you. Izuku lifted his head and looked Hisashi in the eyes. Really? There was so much hope in that one word. Really? Sweet little owl, you're not getting away from me and Shoyuta that easily. He can handle a little insubordination, especially when it's from you. Hisashi ran his fingers through Izuku's hair, coming to a small snag and gently detangling it. Can I tell you something, little bird? When Izuku nodded, Hisashi continued. Shoyuta and I have been talking lately, and well, we love you. We know you were only supposed to be a temporary placement, but you fit our family perfectly. Izuku's eyes widened in surprise. We have been wanting to expand our family for years, but we weren't going to adopt someone that wouldn't be able to get along with Hitoshi. But you're perfect. Not only do you get along with him, but he also adores you. The two of you have been brothers from the first day you were with us. So, Izuku, it's up to you now. Do you want to be a part of our family? You don't have dash. Izuku interrupted him with a laugh. Yes, please. Please be my papa. Okay. Hisashi squeezed him tightly. I'll be your papa, and you can be my tiniest son. Hi everyone. Thank you all for the love on this FIC. I am letting you all know that I am not abandoning the story, but it is going on pause for the next month or more. Data stream is about to get intense, and it's only got about 5 or 6 chapters left, unless Aizu and his gremlins refuse to stop, so until I finish that, Screech is on pause. Again, I am not abandoning Screech. This has always been my scientific to datastream, and all my current focus is on datastream. Thank you all, and I'll be back to Screech soon. Shoyuta sprinted across the rooftops when he got the call from Hizashi that Izuku had been found. As soon as he got close enough, he had pulled Izuku into a tight hug and hadn't let him go. "I'm so glad Zashi found you," he whispered in a broken voice. "I was so scared you would hurt yourself." Clinging to Shoyuta just as tightly, Izuku admitted through a fresh wave of tears, "I started to." He pulled back slightly and brought up his wrist where he had drawn that single drop of blood. Before I could get any further, I remembered that there were actually people who cared about me. And, he paused, turning around when he heard Kigo land behind them on the roof, before finishing in a whisper, "I promised Kigo I would stay alive for one more week." Kigo leaned in and buried his face in Izuku's curls. "I have never been happier that I make you promise me that every week," Kigo said. Pulling back a bit, he added, "Although, maybe I should add, I promise not to run away in the middle of the night, too?" Izuku smiled slightly at him. "You don't have to worry about me running away, not really. Izuku trailed off. "You just don't have to worry about that. I promise not to run again," he finished in a whisper. "Okay," Kigo said softly and ruffled his hair. "How about we go home, Keizu?" "Hitoshi is worried about you," Shoyuta suggested. Izuku nodded. Once everyone had gotten settled back at home, Hizashi and Hitoshi had gone back to sleep, and Izuku and Shoyuta settled on the couch with the TV on mute and Shuta's fingers carting through Izuku's hair. Even though Izuku was back home, Shoyuta still didn't want to leave him alone. His son had one of the single worst days of his life, after all, and no amount of hugs and cuddles would be able to just wash away the feeling of killing a person. Even if Shoyuta wasn't too sure that Nomu, was a person. "Hey, Shoyuta?" Izuku whispered. "Emichim?" Izuku nuzzled into Shuta's shoulder a bit more and said, "Earlier today. That's not the first time I've killed with my screech." Shuta's hand paused for a second before he pulled Izuku even closer. "You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, but if you do, I'm here to listen." He kissed the top of Izuku's head. After a quiet hoot, Izuku whispered, "I was 7. It was a few weeks after my dad had thrown me off a bridge." It took all of Shuta's self-control not to interrupt him. His son had been thrown off a bridge. "My dad left us after that, and I haven't seen him since. But I remember my mom went out for the night, and I was home alone. All the doors and windows were locked. Sometime around midnight, I heard the key in the lock, so I thought Mom had come home. I didn't pay any attention to it, and I was about to go back to sleep, but then my door was opened. The person who walked in wasn't my mom." Izuku took a shaky breath and continued. "Had the key, so when he told me my mom had sent him to pick me up and take me somewhere, well, again, I was 7. I trusted him." Izuku hung his head in a mix of shame and embarrassment. "I clearly know better now. Never let them take you to a secondary location, but I was 7. I didn't ask questions. We drove for a while, just a little outside the city." Izuku took Shuta's hand and started playing with his fingers for something to do. "When we got out of the car, I was scared. I had finally realized something was wrong, but I was still stupid and went with him into the trees. At that point, I was pretty sure he was going to kill me, but I didn't know why. So, as I was following him, I was crying. I think he might have been either trying to show pity, or something, maybe he was just being cruel. He told me that my dad had hired him, and that it wasn't anything personal." Izuku was crying now, so Shoyuta held him closer with the arm Izuku wasn't clinging to. After a few moments, Izuku was able to continue. "He lunged at me with a knife, and I managed to dodge. It was the middle of the night, and it was super dark, but the darkness hadn't affected me in a while at that point, so I wasn't having any problems in the darkness. The guy started chasing me. He was a lot more experienced in the woods than I was, so he caught me. When he went to stab me, I panicked and screeched at him. It was my first time." Izuku stopped talking. "I'm so sorry, Izuku. That's not something that a child should ever have to go through. It took me 3 days to get back home after that. I was covered in his blood, but no one stopped me, no one helped me." Izuku took a deep breath. "But I've known since then what I can do with my screech, so I have been careful not to use more power than necessary. Today was the first time since I was 7 that I went all out." He looked up at Shoyuta. I know you could have handled the entire invasion yourself, but I have to interrupt you, Aizu. I couldn't have taken that creature out. You were correct that my fighting style would have put me at a very distinct disadvantage, and you were the perfect person to take them on. You saved not only me but the entire class. You shouldn't have had to do that, but that is the fault of the villains who decided to attack. Shoyuta ruffled his hair again. I'm proud of you, Izuku. Thank you. The rest of the weekend passed quietly. Izuku was never alone. Someone was always there with him in cuddling range. He had nightmares every time he closed his eyes about the man he had killed when he was 7, as well as the Nomu. Kigo had taken one of his days off to keep Izuku literally tucked under his wing for the day, and Shudo had come over to watch movies another day. Legend of the Guardians, The Owls of Ga'Hoole? Is that a real movie? Izuku asked skeptically. It doesn't sound like a real movie. It's real, Shudo promised. It's mainly about a barn owl, but I think there's a screech owl in there somewhere. Hitoshi nodded. Ezelrib is a screech owl. I read the wiki. He's one of the brown ones, though, not the pretty gray ones like you, Hitoshi nudged Izuku. The three boys watched the movie, and Izuku was fascinated. The animation was beautiful. When they returned to school on Monday, the rest of the class was slightly in awe of their adorable bird classmate, and only the looks that Shudo and Hitoshi shot them kept them from crowding Izuku. However, not even they could keep Kaminari from approaching Izuku. Hey man, how was your weekend? He asked with a blinding smile. Izuku gave a small smile back. It was kind of rough, honestly, but I'm still here. Kaminari seemed to remember that Jiro told him the last time she saw Izuku he was covered in blood and other bits of monster and winced. Oh right, sorry. Whatever happened at the USJ, I didn't see most of it. I kinda went stupid and had to be carried out. He rubbed the back of his neck. But I heard you saved us all. So, thanks man. Oh yeah. I'm glad you weren't hurt, Izuku replied quietly. Are you okay? Kaminari asked gently. Izuku paused and then whispered, I'm fine, just haven't been sleeping all that well. Nightmares. Before Kaminari could say anything else, the bell rang and Shoyuta walked in. Izuku breathed a sigh of relief as Kaminari went back to his desk and the rest of the class turned their attention to the teacher. So, I hope you all had a relaxing weekend, Shoyuta began as he walked into the classroom. Because your fight isn't over yet. Nearly every person in the class started muttering to each other nervously, wondering what he meant by that, but Izuku, Hitoshi, and Shudo could smell a logical ruse a mile away by now, and so they weren't worried. The UA Sports Festival is coming up, he finished with his manic grin. The relief from the rest of the class was palpable as they cried out, Why would you scare us like that? Yeah, let's kick some butt. Kirishima exclaimed. Hold up, Kaminari spoke up. Are you sure this is a good idea? Yeah, Jiro picked up where Kaminari left off. Wouldn't the villains all just attack us when we're all in the same area like that? Apparently, the administration feels this is a good way to show that the threat has been handled and that our school is able to deal with threats. This is a showcasing of our resilience. Or something. Whatever. The point is, the sports fest is coming up and you're all encouraged to train more after school. Feel free to book time in the gyms. Yes, Aizawa-sensei, the class said in unison. Shoyuta then pulled out his sleeping bag and crawled under his desk. As everyone sat for dinner that night, Izuku was noticeably more quiet than usual. Hey there, baby bird, you good? Hisashi asked him. Oh, yes. Izuku blushed and looked up at Hisashi, who only looked at him over the rim of his glasses. Izuku sighed and started playing with his food. It's just, can I opt out? Of the sports festival? Izuku glanced at Shoyuta. Shoyuta paused in eating at Izuku's question and raised an eyebrow. It's just, Izuku's blush deepened. It's a bird thing? But, care to elaborate? Shoyuta questioned. Oh! Hitoshi exclaimed, I think I know. The sports fest is in the spring, and a lot of owls molt during the spring. He looked at Izuku. Am I right? Izuku buried his face in his hands and nodded. Every year, the sports fest is in the middle of my molt. I really can't do much of anything during those 2 weeks. Zuzubird, Just because you won't have pretty wings for a few days doesn't mean you can't participate. You can run the events quirkless. That's what Toshi's most likely going to do. Hisashi encouraged. Izuku shook his head. It's not just that my wings will be gross, he started. My wings aren't constantly out like most other avians, so I won't technically lose my feathers. I won't even be able to manifest my wings until the molt is done. To compensate for that, though, my body gives me a pretty severe fever, and my back and joints ache the entire time. Also, I'll be itchy all over, I'll barely be able to sit still, and I'll be really cold and emotional. He looked at Shoyuta. Did you never notice that Screech was never active around the time of the sports fest? I'm normally not out patrolling around the time of the sports fest myself, so no, I never noticed. Shoyuta took another bite of dinner. That does sound like a pretty big disadvantage. Izuku nodded. It'll start soon, probably in about a week. How have you dealt with it in the past? Hisashi asked. Since you had been pretending to be quirkless and all. Well, it's the end of flu season, so I would just claim to have the flu. No one cared that the quirkless kid was out of class, and even though the flu doesn't normally take 2 weeks to get over, they would just assume that I had a weaker immune system and couldn't fight off the flu like everyone else could. Izuku shrugged. It's probably the only time I actually didn't mind being thought of as quirkless. Okay, well, we won't need to use that excuse again, Hisashi said. Netsu will excuse you from classes for the weeks you're molting, and Hitoshi can bring you your homework. Shoyuta nodded his agreement. And you'll be excused from the sports fest after Netsu hears about your circumstances. You can stay home and watch the event from the living room. Izuku grinned. Thank you. I love watching it every year. I bet you could get Kigo to keep you company, Hitoshi added. I mean, he probably molts too, so he'd be sympathetic to what you're going through, and he could have your input on any students he wants to scout for internships. Hisashi snorted. Bold of you to assume he's going to put in an offer for anyone other than Aizu. He already told me he wanted to put in an internship offer to me, and I turned him down. Izuku shook his head. I want to go underground, and while I love Kei, he's about as subtle as a lilac-bursted roller. No, I'll only accept an offer from an underground hero, and Kei knows it. Lilac-bursted roller? Hitoshi whispered, pulling out his phone to look up the bird. He whistled appreciatively when he saw the images. That bird was a mix of purples, blues, greens, and yellows. Shoyuta let out a sigh. I was already planning to put in an offer for the both of you. I know your current skill sets, and no one else will be able to help Toshi with fine-tuning his capture scarf technique, and I'm not sure I trust many people to have a former vigilante around without attempting to arrest them. Izuku hummed thoughtfully. Would I even be able to intern with another hero, though? What with the reform program and all? Technically, yes, Shoyuta hedged. The hero would need to be informed of your enrollment in the reform program, and your supervisor would need to approve the placement should they still be willing to mentor you. Izuku and Hitoshi gave Shoyuta deadpan looks and then glanced at each other. He'd never approve anyone else, would he? Izuku sighed. Nope, you're stuck with him, Hitoshi verified. Izuku shrugged. Well, good thing he's the only one I'd actually want to intern with. The next day found Izuku at lunch with Hitoshi, Shudo, and Momo all in the line to get their lunch from Lunch Rush. I think I'll just get a little bit of rice today, Izuku said. I'm not all that hungry. Hitoshi glanced at him. You didn't eat much at breakfast, he said. Are you feeling all right? Izuku waved his hand in a SO motion. I'm okay for now, but I'm definitely starting to not feel well. Momo put her wrist to Izuku's forehead. You don't have a fever, she stated. Not yet, no, Izuku verified and then blushed. I'm going to start molting in a few days, and I'm starting to show pre-molt symptoms. It's nothing serious, honest. What's nothing serious? Kaminari had come up next to the four, with Jiro tagging along. Hey there, hot stuff, he winked at Izuku and grinned at the boy's bright blush. Kei Kaminari. Izuku squeaked. You can't just say things like that. Kaminari grinned unapologetically. Watch me. Anyways, what's nothing serious? Shudo spoke up. Izuku was telling us about how he's going to be sick for a few weeks. Not sick. Izuku interjected. Molting. You'll have a fever, body aches, and won't be able to attend classes. That sounds like sick to me. Shudo deadpanned as he collected his food tray and waited for the others to get theirs. Izuku mumbled something under his breath no one could understand. Fine, close enough, he admitted louder. But I'm still going to be training as much as I can up until my molt starts in full. Hitoshi grinned at the others. You guys want to know a secret about Aizu? Izuku's eyes widened. He knew where Toshi was going with this and started to shake his head as Hitoshi's grin turned evil. My birdie brother is a master-level quirk analyst, so if you need any help with your quirk, you should ask him. Toshi. Izuku covered his face with one hand, since he had his lunch tray in the other. Why do you do these things to me? The others laughed, and they all migrated to an empty table, Hitoshi, Shudo, and Kaminari on one side, while Momo, Jiro, and Izuku were on the other, with Kaminari directly across from Izuku. Kaminari leaned across the table and smiled at Izuku. Was that real? He asked. Are you really all that good with quirks? Well, I have been analyzing quirks since I could hold a crayon, so I think I'm better than the average person my age, but I wouldn't call myself master level, Izuku hedged. Well, master level or not, I'm getting desperate to figure out how to stop going stupid every time I use my quirk, so if you have any ideas, I'd love to hear them. Are you sure? Izuku asked. I've been told often that my analysis is creepy, and once I get started, I have a tendency to just keep going. That's okay, I just want to know where I'm going wrong, so I can maybe fix it before the sports fest. Izuku took a deep breath. You asked for it. Okay, so where you're going wrong is here. You're trying to make your quirk do something it's fundamentally not meant to do. Now, with most people, when they try to do something that their quirk says they can't, or that it's not meant to do, nothing happens. Example, if Momo tried to make a living thing, her quirk wouldn't work and nothing would happen. That's not going to happen with you, Kaminari. Your quirk will still produce the electricity, but you're overcompensating to try to make your quirk do what it's not meant to. This is real life, not a video game, and you're trying to direct your electricity as if you were a real-life Pikachu. Izuku took a bite of his lunch and shrugged. It's not completely your fault though, he continued. You've probably grown up with stories of Zeus and Thor, Pokemon, other video games, everything that shows lightning being something that can be directed, but that's not how your body and quirk are built. You are built to be a current. The electricity isn't meant to travel very far from your body. Stop trying to force it. You short-circuit because you're trying to push out enough electricity to hit a target, but without some sort of guide, it's completely random where your electricity goes. Kaminari looked at him as though he held the answers to the universe. So, what you're saying is, I'm not a long-range fighter? Not unless you work on some serious support gear. No, you are a walking, talking taser, and you should be focusing on close combat. Maybe look into some highly conductive metal knuckles, or conductive wire lines in your costume that would help direct your electricity to your limbs for more electric kicks and punches. Maybe add a staff with veins of copper or silver, at least until you decide on if you really want to incorporate a staff into your final costume, then you should go with gold, that will give you a little bit more range while not shorting yourself out. Hitoshi nudged Kaminari. If you want, you can join the training with me and Aizu after classes. When Aizu's molt really starts, he's not going to be able to train with me. Kaminari's eyes sparkled as he looked at Izuku. Would that be okay with you? Sure? Shoyuda usually oversees our training though, Izuku warned. Kaminari tilted his head. Shoyuda? Oh, Aizawa-sensei, Izuku clarified with a blush. Sorry, I've been calling him Shoyuda ever since I started living with him a few months ago. Hitoshi smirked. He'll be calling him Dad soon though. Izuku smiled at that. I accidentally did this morning, he admitted. I was in the living room reading ahead in Lit when he came home from patrol. I don't know if he noticed or not, it was almost 3 a.m., and he just grunted, ruffled my hair, and went to bed. Hitoshi snorted and Shudo chuckled, but Kaminari looked at Izuku wide-eyed. You've been up since 3 a.m. and you're still so awake? What is your secret? Izuku blinked at him and tilted his head almost 90 degrees. so his ear was pressed against his shoulder. I'm an owl? I don't really sleep at night. I train after classes, and then I go to sleep when I get home, wake up for dinner, then go back to sleep for as long as I can. I normally wake up around midnight or 1 a.m. and can't get back to sleep after that. Can I text you when my insomnia acts up? Kaminari asked. Normally I just end up playing games on my phone. Izuku shrugged. If you want to. A hair to the right. Ah, right there? Izuku practically melted as Hisashi scratched his back in between his shoulder blades. Hisashi chuckled. I take it the molting started? Izuku shook his head. Still pre-molt. I can still bring out my wings for now, he said, manifesting his wings to prove it. Before Izuku could retract his wings, Hisashi ran his fingers through some of the feathers. They've lost their gloss, he muttered. Izuku nodded. Yeah, it's almost time. He pulled one of his wings closer so he could see his feathers closer. Probably tomorrow or the day after. Izuku retracted his wings and leaned against Hisashi. I hate molting, but my wings are so pretty right after, and sometimes they're even bigger than before. Izuku jolted away and reached for his lower back and started itching like crazy. Hisashi laughed and started helping his scratch. Here's some pictures of the lilac-breasted roller. It's such a pretty bird. If you're going to watch this with me, you are legally obligated to scratch my back whenever I want, understood? Izuku commanded Kigo as he walked in from the patio after flying in. Izuku was currently laying on the floor, wiggling like a dog trying to scratch his own back and being wholly unsuccessful. Baby bird, have some dignity. Kigo squawked and pulled him up to his feet, turned him around, and started scratching. Tell me where. After Kigo finally got that elusive itch taken care of, the two sat up on the couch where the television was already turned on to the pre-show commercials. So, Owlet, if I wanted to poach a student for my intern, who do you think I should be watching? Kigo asked. Izuku thought for a moment. Ashido and Kaminari would mesh with your personality the best. They're both meme-loving gossips. You'd love them. On the surface, Kirishima would get along with you really well too, but his constant talk about hard work and being manly would get on your nerves pretty quick. Izuku hummed again. Uraraka would love the opportunity to work with you, but there's really nothing you can offer her except for exposure, so he jolted and started scratching his arm, muttering about stupid molting season. So even if she impresses you, don't send an offer to her. Kigo nodded along and ruffled his hair. Okay, so I'm mainly watching for Ashido and Kaminari? Izuku paused in his scratching and tilted his head. No. Now that I'm thinking about it, your styles are too different. You get along like a house on fire, but Kaminari should probably be with Hisashi, and Ashido would do best with someone who fights either close combat or mid-range. Hey, I can fight up close. Kigo defended himself. Yeah, I know, but that's not your preferred method of fighting, Izuku shrugged. Oh, it's starting. Sho Yuta is supposed to be commentating with Hisashi, so this is going to be amazing. Guys, gals, and non-binary pals, welcome to the annual UA Sports Festival. I'll be your host today for this fine event. I'm Present Mike. With me in the booth is my CEO host, Eraserhead. Say hello, Eraser. No, came Shuta's bland answer. Izuku giggled as Hisashi tried to coax a better greeting out of Sho Yuta and failed miserably. Sometimes I find it hard to believe those two are in a loving marriage, Kigo joked. Izuku laughed at that. Sho Yuta really does act as though he can't stand Hisashi when they're in public, but you should see them when they're relaxing after a long week. Sho Yuta is a total cuddle bug, rarely leaves Sashi's side on the weekends. They are couples goals. I wish I had someone like that. Same. The two were quiet for a while as the classes were introduced, and then Momo took the stage for the student pledge. I thought the person who took first place on the entrance exam did the student pledge? Kigo asked. This year's first place student is stuck at home molting, Izuku sassed, smacking Kigo on the arm. Oh yeah, what about second place? Expelled. Kigo raised an eyebrow. Third. Izuku shrugged. I'm not sure who third place was, but the class representative is a good choice. Momo won't embarrass the class. Momo's speech finished up and Midnight announced that the first event was an obstacle course. Wanna place bets on who's going to win this? Kigo asked. Izuku shook his head. I'd bet on Hitoshi no matter what, he's my brother after all. Then why not? Bet on him? Kigo asked as the students started the course. He's not likely going to win. I won't be surprised if he throws the whole festival. He doesn't want to attract any attention, and Shura's already said he's going to be offering me and Toshi internships, so there's no one for Toshi to impress. The two fell silent for a little while, before Kigo sat up straighter, noticing something on the television. Oh, who's that? Kigo asked, pointing to a girl with chin-length silver hair. She was attacking the robots with pieces of scrap metal that she was controlling telekinetically. She's long range. I could work with that. Izuku shrugged. She's in 1B, but I'm not too sure what her name is. Yana something? I think. Kigo wrote down in a notebook his observations. I think I'm going to send her an offer. Izuku shrugged. Okay. Who's the kid with the scales? That's pretty cool too. Why are you asking about so many 1B students? I don't know anything about them, Izuku whined, before trying to scratch his shoulder. That does look like a good offense-defense quirk, though. Kigo gasped excitedly and started shaking Izuku frantically. Zuzu. Zuzu. He's a bird. Who's that? Tell me he's in your class. I need the bird boy. He scribbled in his notebook, and Izuku could see that he had just written bird boy. Izuku snorted. That's Tokoyami Fumikage. The bird head is just a mutation, his quirk isn't bird-related at all. His quirk is a sentient shadow that he calls Dark Shadow. Dark Shadow does usually look like a bird, but I think she only looks like that because Tokoyami has a bird head. She usually purrs and acts more like a cat. I still want him. Tell him I want him, Kigo insisted. I'm sure he'll notice when he gets your internship offer. Don't care, tell him anyways. Izuku snorted at that, right before he turned his back to Kigo and started using his arm as a scratching post. I hate molting season. Izuku hissed. By the time the two had tuned back into the event, Shudo was freezing a path through a minefield while other students were setting the mines off in a shower of pink smoke and glitter. Wait, did we miss the middle? I blame you. Izuku hit Kigo on the arm. Oh hey, it's not my fault. Kigo defended himself. Shudo had gotten first place and his lead was a lot bigger than he had expected it to be, but the 1B girl with the vines for hair came in second place. Shudo kept watching the leaderboard, wondering what place Hitoshi would be, if he even is going to bother with moving on to the next event. A few minutes later, Hitoshi's name came on the leaderboard in 41st place, right in front of Aoyama. And with that, our 42 students that are moving on to the second event have been chosen. Present Mix's voice called out. Shudo smiled softly at Hitoshi's offended face as he came up to him. I thought for sure that they would only move on the top 40. Now I have to put in actual effort. You don't have to, love. You can still throw the next match. Hitoshi shook his head. No, I'll throw an event for myself, but you know as well as I do the second event is always all about teamwork. I don't want to sabotage an entire group just because I don't want to move on. In that case, would you like to be on the same team as me? Shudo asked. Sure. Hitoshi looked around for other people who would make a good team. Pity Aizu's not here, he'd be great for our team. Kaminari pranced up to the two and grinned. I heard you say Aizu? How is he? Hitoshi smirked. If you join our team for the next event, I'll tell you. He offered, and laughed as Kaminari's face lit up. I'm in. Great, we'll probably need one more. Sho, go see if you can snag Momo. Shudo hummed in agreement and went to find Momo as Hitoshi turned to Kaminari. Aizu's miserable. He's molting. Do you know what that is? He asked. I think so. Kaminari hedged. He's losing feathers, right? Yeah. And the process SCKS for him more than other avians due to how his wings are retractable. He's got a fever, he's super itchy, and he's moody. He's been wearing for sweaters because he's also cold. Kaminari winced. Would it be okay if I came over to visit, say hi? His cheeks blushed lightly. "Oh, you are so precious," Hitoshi muttered. "You know Izuku's totally oblivious, right? You're going to have to outright say, 'Hey Izu, I like you,' for him to realize that you've been flirting with him for weeks." Kaminari grinned and scratched the back of his head. "So, I was being as obvious as I thought I was?" "Oh yeah, so obvious. Me and Shudo have been trying to clue him in, but he's totally clueless." Hitoshi thought for a moment. "I'll ask my dad if you can come over. If he says yes, then I'm going to be expecting you to flat out tell Izu you like him." Kaminari laughed. "All right, I can do that." Shudo came back with Momo just a few moments before midnight announced the next event. "Huh," Izuku muttered. "I didn't think Toshi was going to bother with the second event." Kigo looked up at the TV from where he was scratching Izuku's back. "So, you still don't want to make bets on who's going to win?" "Nope." He watched the groups get all set up. "They have all sorts of mixtures in there," Izuku mumbled, seeing a girl from support mixed with Uraraka, a girl with vines for hair from 1B and Ida. Kigo got up and wandered into the kitchen. "You hungry owlet?" Izuku hummed as he got up to join Kigo to look for something to either eat or make, keeping an ear open for the cavalry battle. "I think we have some chicken in here?" Izuku opened the fridge and started looking through the leftovers. "Might not be enough for both of us, though." "Meh, how about we run out to pick something up?" Kigo suggested. "You up for a quick outing?" Izuku shook his head. "If you want to run and grab something, that's cool, but it's cold today and I already look a mess in my four sweaters." Kigo laughed. "Are they at least all your sweaters?" Izuku grinned. "One of them is the one on the bottom. Then I have one of Toshi's, followed by Zashi's, and finally this one is Shuda's." Kigo just shook his head. "I don't feel like leaving you all alone, so how about we just order out?" "Sure." As Kigo called in an order for Doru, Izuku glanced back at the television to see the places. Toshi's team had lost their 10 million points but were still in first place. It looked as though the other teams were all still fighting over the headband that was on the ground, frozen in a block of ice. "Smart," Izuku observed. "If I didn't know that Endeavor wanted him, I'd totally offer him an internship," Kigo said. "Shudo would rather go with another hero, but no other fire user is willing to stand up against Endeavor, and Sho's already said he's going to intern with a fire user." Toshi's team finished the second event in first place, and the students all took a break for lunch. Conveniently, the food Kigo had ordered arrived about the same time, so they sat on the floor near the patio to eat. Izuku yawned shortly after they had finished eating. "Have I mentioned how much I hate this?" "Come here, baby bird, you can take a nap with me," Kigo huffed out in amusement. "Growing feathers takes a lot of energy." Izuku was in such a deep sleep that he hadn't so much as stirred when Kigo tried to wake him up for the 1v1 matches, so Kigo let him sleep through it. The older bird fell asleep right after Shudo defeated Tokoyami for the first place. The two of them didn't wake up until the others had returned home, Kigo blinking awake and Izuku waking with a loud hiss. "And that," Shoyuda said to Hitoshi, gesturing to Izuku, "is why I said no to Kaminari coming over." Izuku practically danced out into the kitchen on Monday morning, one of the largest smiles on his face Hisashi had ever seen, eyes twinkling in delight. "Good morning, Papa," Izuku exclaimed, giving Hisashi a big hug. Giggling, Hisashi replied, "And a very good morning to you as well, my baby owl. I take it it's a good day?" Izuku nodded his head and extended his wings, full of fresh, glossy feathers. "I'm finally done molting. And look, I got an extra 7 inches. Izuku ran his fingers down his primary flight feathers. They changed color slightly too. "I'm probably only a few molts away from having a full set of adult feathers. I'm happy for you, baby." Hisashi hugged his baby bird tightly as Hitoshi shuffled into the kitchen. "Morning, Zoo," Hitoshi yawned, flopping into a chair at the kitchen. "Toshi, look, my wings have more white in them now." Izuku shoved one of his wings right in Hitoshi's face while grinning like a loon. "I was hoping they'd be bigger, but I didn't think they'd be whiter. I've almost grown out of all my baby feathers." Hitoshi had just barely managed to keep his eyes open long enough to see Izuku's wings when Izuku hopped away, most likely. looking for Shoyuta so he could keep showing off his wings. Where did my shy, quiet brother go? Hitoshi mumbled. No one gave him permission to be such a morning person. Hisashi laughed and placed a mug of coffee in front of Hitoshi and then ruffled his hair. Shoyuta, 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 Dad. Look. Aren't my new feathers so pretty? Izuku jumped on the bed where Shoyuta was still attempting to wake himself up. Come on, you're not looking, he whined and started shaking Shoyuta awake. Oh gods, now there's two of them, Shoyuta grumbled, wondering who he set off to give him a son that was every bit as hyper as his husband was. Just look at my new, pretty feathers and I'll leave you alone. Izuku tried to compromise. Fine, Shoyuta mumbled and opened his eyes. They're very nice, Aizu. Now go away. You're no fun. Izuku poked Shoyuta one more time before getting up and going back to the kitchen. Papa, Dad's a grouch. Izuku complained with his cheeks puffed out. With another laugh, Hisashi said, You're just now realizing this? Okay, who are you and what did you do with my brother? Hitoshi asked, earning himself a laugh from Izuku. I can fly again. Izuku bounced up and down a few times. I'm going to fly to school today. I got my flight permit a few days before I started molting, but I'm going to use it today. He turned to Hisashi. Can I fly to school today? Please? How could I say no to that cute little face? Hisashi pinched Izuku's cheeks. Just make sure you're not late to class, or Shoyuta will never let you hear the end of it. Izuku nodded and then bounced to his room to get dressed in his school uniform. I hope his energy remains all day, Hisashi said wistfully. A few minutes later, Izuku darted out of his bedroom and got his shoes before going to the patio and sliding the door open. Once he got his shoes on and his backpack put on across his front, Izuku climbed onto the railing and jumped, spreading his wings and cheering as he flew off. Hisashi couldn't help laughing. Toshi, do you mind bringing Aizu his breakfast when you get to class? He was too excited to eat. Hitoshi waved a hand as he took a sip of his coffee. Izuku couldn't stop his grin if he tried. The wind in his new feathers felt so clean and refreshing, the pure joy of soaring through the skies was intoxicating, and at this time of day, there were no heroes on duty that could encroach upon his claim on the sky. It was all his. Izuku took a deep breath of sky and did a few barrel rolls while still flying in the general direction of UA. He could see the school from up here, and he knew he should be making his descent to the school now, but he was just so happy to finally be in the air again. He started to make lazy circles around the building, not quite wanting to come down, but knowing he shouldn't roam too far from the school. Glancing at his phone, he saw he only had about 10 minutes before class started, so he decided it was time to land. He tucked his wings in close and went for a steep dive, going faster and faster, wishing he had a speedometer on him, wondering if he could reach the elusive 240 kilometers per hour he'd been trying for. Right at the last moment, he snapped his wings open, turning his descent into a glide, and then a full halt with a few flaps of his wings, and dropped the last 10 feet to the ground, and never once did he lose his grin. Holy shit, that was Cece, a voice called out from behind him. Izuku turned around quickly. He hadn't noticed there was anyone there when he was diving, but now he saw that Kaminari had been really close to where Izuku had landed. Oh, hi. Sorry, I didn't notice you there. Nah, man, you're good. I'm so glad I got to see that. That was hot. Kaminari smirked at him and winked. You're feeling better now, I take it? Why yeah, my molt finished up during the night, and now I can fly again. Izuku got that manic grin in his eyes again and hopped over to Kaminari's side. Look how pretty my new feathers are. They're all soft and glossy, and I got another 7 inches to my wingspan. And some of my darker feathers have lightened up. I only have a few baby feathers left. I'm probably just 2 or 3 molts away from a full set of adult feathers. Izuku was bouncing along beside Kaminari as he was showing off his feathers. They are really pretty, Kaminari said, laughing. He'd never seen Izuku this happy before, and he couldn't help thinking that he was so cute like this. Is it okay if I touch them? Izuku nodded, and Kaminari gently started running his fingers through Izuku's feathers. Whoa, they are super soft. All feathers have to be super soft, otherwise we wouldn't be anywhere near as silent in flight as we are. Oh, there are so many owl facts I could tell you. Yeah. How about we go to a cafe or something after school and you can tell me all about them? Kaminari suggested with a grin. Make it a date? Kaminari saw the exact moment Izuku blue-screened. Are you really asking me out? Like on a real date? That's what I said. How about it? Just one date we can talk about owl facts, and if we don't both want another date, then we can just be friends, but if we do, we can go from there. Kaminari gently stroked Izuku's feathers again. I've been trying to flirt with you since the first week of school, but I guess you haven't noticed? Izuku's mouth was gaping as he just blinked at Kaminari repeatedly. No, I didn't notice, he blushed. But if you're sure you really want to sure? There's a cafe Hitoshi and I usually go to, it's pretty close. Kaminari smiled widely. I'd love to go there. They could see Shoyuta walking down the hall. Oh, we need to get inside before Sensei kills us. The two boys darted into the classroom with only 30 seconds to spare. As soon as Shoyuta flopped over in his sleeping bag and let Midnight take over on helping the kids decide on their hero names, Izuku turned Hitoshi's chair around and gave him a look of desperation. Toshi, he hissed, I think I have a date today after school. Oh. Hitoshi drawled, slight smirk gracing his lips. Did Kaminari finally man up and ask you out? Izuku squawked in indignation. How did you know? Hitoshi laughed as Shudo pulled his chair next to them. Did I hear correctly? You have a date with Kaminari after school? Izuku nodded at him with a bright blush. I was gushing to him about my new feathers, and I may have let out an owl fact. When I told him I know a lot more, he suggested going to a cafe after school to hear more, and before I could say yes or no, he suggested it be a date. Izuku covered his face with both hands. Then he said he's been flirting with me since the first week of school. Yeah, Shudo said. He hasn't been very subtle about it either. Very obvious, Hitoshi agreed. Izuku just squeaked. You both knew and didn't say anything? Hitoshi raised an eyebrow. We tried. You're just as dense as a brick wall and never took the hints. Which cafe are you going to? Shudo asked. I suggested the Owl Cafe, Izuku muttered. Do you think that was a bad idea? I didn't tell him the name of the place, so we can still change it. Nah, that cafe is super cute, and you're always so adorable when you have a bunch of owls preening your hair, Hitoshi smirked. He's going to fall hard for you after that. I hope you're ready. Tashi-eth. Izuku whined, once again covering his face as the other two laughed. Midnight walked over to the three. Well, it doesn't look like you're talking about your hero names, boys. I hope you're all ready to present your names. All three nodded and showed her their white bards that had their names on them, names they had long since chosen. Very well, step up and present. Midoriya, you can go first. Izuku nodded and got up in front of the class. So, the name I'm going to use is the same one I used for my vigilante name. I'm going to be the owl hero, Screech, he said with a smile. Approve. Thank you, Midoriya. Shinso, you're up next. Hitoshi sauntered up to the podium. I'm going to use the hypnotizing hero, Hypnos. Ooh, I like it. Proved. Todoroki, your turn. The contrasting hero, Duality, Shudo said simply. Wow, you boys are 3 for 3. Let's see if the rest of the class can keep up with this momentum. Who's next? Once everyone had chosen their hero names, Shoyuta handed out the stacks of internship offers. Ah, Midoriya, you didn't get any offers at all? Shiro asked, turning to him. Izuku shrugged. Well, I didn't need any. I pretty much have to do my internship with Saizawa-sensei. Oh yeah, I keep forgetting about that vigilante thing you did, he said. You don't act at all like what I picture a vigilante would. Thanks? I guess. Izuku tilted his head. Oh, I actually have suggestions for a few people, excuse me. Izuku got up and headed over to Tokoyami. Hello, Midoriya. Is there something I can help you with? He asked. No, but I was told to relay a message to you, Izuku blushed. Hawks said he was going to send you an internship request, and he wanted me to make sure you knew he really wanted to have you as his intern. Tokoyami's eyes widened in surprise. Hawks, the number 3 hero? Tokoyami looked back to his list of offers and found Hawk's name there. What a mad banquet of darkness, he said softly. Yeah, so, you don't have to pick him if you don't want to, and I'm like 97% sure he only put in the offer because you have a bird head, but he is a really good hero, and you would learn a lot from him. You'll just have to be patient with him, he can be a lot to deal with. You speak as though you know him, Tokoyami hedged. Oh yeah, we go flying together a few times a week, text constantly, and get fried chicken together a lot. He's practically my older brother at this point, Izuku grinned. I mean, Hawks is one of my favorite people, not to mention my personal number 3 favorite hero. Tokoyami nodded seriously. I shall take that into consideration, thank you. Izuku nodded back at him and then turned his attention to Kaminari. Hey, Kaminari. Izuku smiled softly. Can I see your list of offers? Sure thing. Kaminari handed over his stack of offers and Izuku flipped through them, hoping for a specific name. When he saw the name he was looking for, his eyes lit up. Oh, you have to pick Present Mike. Kaminari, I'm serious, you need to pick him. Kaminari looked at him skeptically. I mean yeah, Mick's pretty cool, but we have such different quirks and styles, are you sure? Izuku nodded frantically. Yes. Present Mick's quirk is super versatile and really powerful. He's had a lot of practice getting his voice to a level to where it won't hurt himself or others, and he'd be the best choice for you to get more control over your electricity. And even though the more noticeable applications of his quirk are long range, Mike is an amazing close combat fighter. There aren't many people who can spar against Eraserhead on equal footing, but Mike is one of them. I promise you, you won't regret going with Mike. Well, with an endorsement like that, how could I say no? Present Mike it is. Yay! Izuku hugged Kaminari and then quickly darted back to Hitoshi before he even realized what he'd done. As soon as he did, though, he practically melted in a puddle of embarrassment. Izuku had been getting nervous as the day progressed, knowing he had a date with Kaminari right after school, so it really wasn't a surprise to him when he walked out the school gates with Kaminari only to see Kigo waiting across the street for their weekly Monday flights. Turning to Kaminari, Izuku blushed. Sorry, I forgot I have a weekly thing with Hawks. I'll be right back. Whoa, that's really Hawks? Number 3 pro hero Hawks? Do you think I can meet him? Kaminari replied with a huge grin. Probably, but let me talk to him. For a few minutes first, okay? When Kaminari nodded, Izuku dashed to the other side of the street to talk to Kigo. Baby bird, it looks like you're canceling last minute, huh? Kigo teased. Izuku blushed again. Why I have a date. Looking over to Kaminari, Kigo gave an appreciative whistle. Way to go, little bro. He's the kid who got 3rd place in the sports fest, right? Yeah. I watched the reruns, he was amazing. And I found out today that he's been flirting with me since the first week of school. Oh. Kigo, look at my new feathers. Izuku pulled out his wings and Kigo got just as excited over his new feathers as Izuku himself had been. Whoa, you must have gotten a good 6 or 7 new inches. And it seems you lost some of your baby feathers. These new ones are so pretty. Running his fingers through the feathers, they're so soft. I love your wings, baby Zoo. Kigo put his whole face in the wings and nuzzled his feathers while Izuku giggled. Thanks, Kay. He gently tugged his wings back and said, Is it okay if we cancel today? Turning serious once again, Kigo ruffled Izuku's hair. On one condition. I still need that promise from you. Izuku nodded. I promise, Kay. I'll stay alive one more week. Okay, Kigo whispered, and then pulled Izuku into a hug. I love you, baby bro. I love you so much. Izuku held on to Kigo just as tightly. I love you too, Kay. They stood like that for a few more moments before pulling away. Oh, Kaminari wanted to meet you. Something about you being the number 3, or something like that. Kigo chuckled. Sure, I'll meet the guys stealing my little zoo from me on a Monday. Kigu. Izuku whined, before leading him over to where Kaminari was still waiting. Hey Kaminari, thanks for waiting. You wanted to meet him, so this is Hawks. Hawks, this is my friend, Kaminari Denki. Izuku had stumbled momentarily at calling Kaminari his friend. Were they going to be boyfriends after this? Or should he have called him his classmate? Was friends the right thing to say? Kaminari flashed a brilliant smile at them. It's really great to meet you. I didn't know Midoriya knew you. Oh yeah, the baby bird is practically my little bro. And I guess he was too flustered about your date to remember we had plans today. He teased them, earning himself a slap on the arm from Izuku and a slight blush from Kaminari. Laughing, Kigo continued. Next time you ask him out, try to avoid Mondays, okay? We have a weekly thing, and I don't want to do it over the phone. Right? Sure, I don't mind moving our date to tomorrow if you still want to do your thing today. Kaminari offered. Nah, we already did, that's what that talk was. And hey, changing the subject a little bit, congrats on your 3rd place in the sports fest. You were great out there, kid. Thanks. Midoriya helped me with ideas on how to use my quirk better, and he relayed more ideas through Shinso when we had our own training sessions. Gotten a lot better with his advice. I haven't short-circuited since I started with this new method of using my quirk. I'm glad. My little owl is absolutely brilliant. I just wish he wanted to be Limelight so I could have snagged him for an internship, but alas, the owlet likes Eraserhead more than me, Kigo pouted. I have never made that a secret, Kay. You've known forever that Eraser's my favorite. Izuku puffed out his cheeks. Yeah, he's been your favorite since before I ever debuted. I know. Doesn't mean I'm not still jealous. Kigo pulled Izuku in close and ruffled his hair to Aiza's hissed protests. Laughing, Kigo let him go. Okay, I won't keep you any longer. Go on and enjoy yourselves. Thanks, man. It was nice meeting you. I'll make sure to take care of Midoriya while we're out. Kaminari said cheerfully. You better, Kigo warned. I'll know otherwise. Before the boys could say anything else, Kigo shot up in the air and flew off. Well, as far as shovel talks go, that wasn't so bad, Kaminari joked before turning back to Izuku. Ready to go? So, do you want weird or cute owl facts first? Izuku asked Kaminari while he had 2 tiny elf owls in his hair and the snowy owl that always hung out with Hitoshi was preening Izuku's curls, and a screech owl had taken a perch next to Kaminari and was playing with his hair. How about a cute one to start us off? Kaminari giggled and pet the owl's feathers. Humming to himself for a moment, Izuku gave the first owl fact. A group of owls is called a parliament. This originates from C.S. Lewis' description of a meeting of owls in the Chronicles of Narnia. Really? Kaminari's eyes were wide as he processed that fact. I've never read the book, though. Next one. The tiniest owl in the world is the elf owl, which is 5 to 6 inches tall and weighs about 1.5 ounces. The Blackistonfish owl is the world's largest and one of the rarest owl species, with an impressive 6-foot wingspan. Izuku gestured to the owls in his hair. These little runts are elf owls. They're super cute, Kaminari said. Izuku nodded slowly, not wanting to dislodge the owls. This next one is kinda embarrassing, but not sure why. In fat years when mice are plentiful, usually monogamous boreal owls are apt to be promiscuous. Because easy prey means less work for parents feeding their young, males have been caught mating with up to 3 females, while females have been seen with at least 1 beau on the side. Kaminari snickered at that. Well, if they're as cute as you are, I'm not surprised. Izuku blushed and hid his face behind his hands. Okay, now we're moving on to creepy facts. Hit me. Kaminari laughed. The eyes of an owl are not true eyeballs. Their tube-shaped eyes are completely immobile, providing binocular vision which fully focuses on their prey and boosts depth perception. That's why owls move their heads so much. And on that note, owls can rotate their necks 270 degrees. Blood pooling system collects blood to power their brains and eyes when neck movement cuts off circulation. You really do know a whole lot about owls, Kaminari said. Yeah. Izuku pet the snowy owl a little and then continued in a whisper, my quirk came in late. There were some issues at home because of it. Once I realized it was an owl quirk, I decided to learn everything there was to know about owls. Kaminari winced. I kinda know what you mean, he replied. It sounds like your parents might not have been super supportive. My parents both have really weak electrical quirks, and they're electricians. They wanted me to follow them, since it's a really stable job and I'm really stupid, so they don't think I'll dash. He was cut off as Izuku threw a balled-up napkin at him. You're not allowed to talk bad about yourself, Kaminari, Izuku said earnestly. Try that again, but be nice to yourself. Izuku blanched. Oh gods, I sound like Toshi. Kaminari tilted his head at that. Huh. Izuku blushed. I used to have a really bad habit of talking really poorly about myself, he admitted. Hitoshi started carrying around a squirt gun and he would squirt me whenever he heard me say something bad about myself and then make me repeat it while using kind words. Yeah, I kinda do that too, Kaminari admitted. Since I short-circuit so often, people have always called me stupid. Plus, I'm really hyper and I get bored easily. I'm pretty sure I have ADHD, but my parents don't believe it's a real thing, so they won't take me to a doctor for it. He shrugged. I'm just waiting now for graduation, then I can get myself a doctor's appointment. You could always talk to Shoyuta or Hizashi about that, Izuku offered. Who? Oh, sorry, Aizawa-sensei or Mike-sensei. They would help you get an appointment and would probably talk to your parents about it too. Izuku looked Kaminari directly in the eyes. You're not stupid, Kaminari. I've met some stupid people, and you're not one of them. So please, don't call yourself stupid again. Kaminari's breath hitched a little as he looked down. Yeah, okay. He then looked back up at Izuku. Thanks. No one's ever said something like that to me. Izuku smiled at him. I'm still learning to be kind to myself, he said gently. And who knows? Helping you learn those same lessons might make them stick better for myself too. Kaminari smiled gently. If you don't mind my asking, no, never mind. Do you have any more facts? Izuku stared at him for a moment. I do, but I rather hear your question. It's personal. Probably too personal for a first date, Kaminari admitted. I really like you, and I don't want to make you too uncomfortable on the first date to make you not want a second. Izuku looked back down and sighed. I think I really like you too, he said quietly. So, in the spirit of fairness, I should tell you that I come with a lot of extra baggage. Izuku started tugging at his fingers. I don't really want to tell you this, but it's probably best to get it out now, before either of us start to develop real feelings. Kaminari looked at him concerned. What do you mean? Izuku sighed deeply. Kaminari, I've got really bad depression and I've gotten a lot better about it, but I still have days where I'm suicidal, he finished in a whisper. That's what my Monday talks with K-Hawks are. I promise him every week that I'll live just one more week. He closed his eyes. I've almost broken that promise a few times. Kaminari was silent, and Izuku was worried he'd scared him off, but then he felt him take his hands in his. Thank you for telling me. His smile was small, but no less genuine. I don't know how I can help you with these things, but I want to be here for you. You're the smartest, kindest, strongest person I know, and I would love to keep seeing you. You really mean that? Izuku asked. You're really willing to put up with all my issues? No. I'm not going to put up with you. What I will do, though, is embrace every aspect of you. If you're sad, I'll try to cheer you up. If you're happy, I can match your energy and be happy with you. Kaminari winked at him. Ready for a cheesy pickup line? Izuku had tears in his eyes and a smile on his face as he nodded. Sure. Are you a magazine? 'Cause, baby, I'd like to subscribe to all your issues. Izuku laughed as his tears started falling. I don't know, it's going to be pretty hard to unsubscribe. There will most likely be a cancellation fee. Are you sure? I don't think I've ever been more sure about anything before, Kaminari agreed wholeheartedly. Izuku nodded. Okay. God damn it. At the exclamation, both boys turned to see where it came from, only to see Hitoshi, Shoyuta, Shudo, and Hizashi watching from a few booths away. I never gave Izuku the talk about loud blondes. Shoyuta hissed to himself, earning a smack from Hizashi. There's nothing wrong with a loud blonde babe. No, Dad's got a point, Hitoshi said. Shudo snickered. Stop trying to get on his good side. You know full well you're the one who helped to facilitate this. Shut up. Are you trying to get me killed? Hitoshi glanced nervously at Shoyuta. Hisashi joined Shudo's snickering. Babe, this is just going to show that our little owl is more like you than we ever could have imagined. He's choosing a loud blonde for himself. Don't do it, Izuku. Loud blondes are nothing but trouble. Kaminari glanced back to Izuku. What? Izuku just buried his face in his hands. Kaminari dash. Denki. Izuku looked back up at him startled. If we're going to be doing this, and I really, really want to, then I want you to call me Denki. Then you have to call me Izuku. Denki nodded with a bright smile. Denki, you already know that I live with Aizawa-sensei, and that Hitoshi's my brother. Well, Mike-sensei is my other dad. So, Mike-sensei and Aizawa-sensei are together? They're married. So, I'll be getting a shovel talk from 3 separate pro heroes in the near future. Cool. You still sure you want to do this? Izuku confirmed. Yeah. You're my boyfriend now, Izuku. No refunds. Izuku had been in a really good mood since he had gotten back home from his date the day before, and it lasted well into the next. Denki had joined their group for lunch again, and they sat next to each other. They even held hands under the lunch table, while Izuku did his very best to imitate a strawberry. His good mood lasted well past when he got home. Most of the class had submitted their internship requests today, and Denki was going to be going with Papa, just like he had suggested, and Izuku had successfully talked Momo out of going with Iwabami and was now going to be interning with Fatgum. Shudo was going to be with his dad, and both Izuku and Hitoshi were of course going to be with Shoyuta. The good mood killer was when he heard Shoyuta muttering about Ida going to Hosu with Manuel and wondering if he was trying to get himself killed going after a serial killer. Izuku got up from where he was watching TV with Hitoshi and walked over to Shoyuta and leaned up against him. Is Ida going to do something dumb? He asked quietly. Shoyuta reached up and gently tugged at one of Izuku's curls. Eavesdropping isn't polite, Zuzu. Izuku snorted. It's not my fault you were talking to yourself, Dad. Izuku hooted in contentment when Shoyuta started running his fingers through his hair. I want to keep an eye on Ida, but I'm going to have you and Hitoshi with me. I don't know how I feel about taking you two into Hosu. Izuku nuzzled into Shuda's shoulder. Be honest, Izuku muttered. Is there really a lot you need to teach me about hero work I haven't already picked up on? I have a potential solution if there isn't a lot I need to learn. Shoyuta was silent for a few minutes. While there is a lot still to teach you that won't be covered during this internship, Shoyuta finally admitted. I will most likely be spending the week going into detail about patrols with Toshi, so it will be mostly review for you. Izuku nodded. In that case, I can take to the skies and keep watch over Ida. I'll let you know if he does something stupid. I won't engage unless necessary. Izuku glanced up at Shuda's face. How does that sound? You can take Toshi to Hosu and teach him all about how patrols work, and I'll keep watch. If you're needed, you'll be there. Izuku could see the way Shoyuta was weighing the options, so he decided to add another push. Plus, I can always help keep an eye out for Stain himself. If I see him, I can let you know and we can track him down. I don't have to engage, I can just track. Shoyuta ruffled his hair and pushed him aside. Go back to Toshi, I'll think about Hosu. Hitoshi was standing off to the side with Shudo as they waited for the entire class to gather at the train station. Shudo was annoyed that the only fire user to send him an internship request was his dad, but he wasn't too upset about it. Honestly, the two of them were mostly upset about having to be apart for the full week that the internships would last. With the intensity of the internship and the different schedules of Limelight versus Underground, neither Shoyuta nor Endeavor were likely to let the two boys have any personal time together. Meanwhile, Izuku and Denki were having a similar goodbye. They'd only been dating for a few days, but Izuku had been really enjoying it so far. He wasn't sure exactly what it was, but Denki just made him feel different. Like, he really liked it when Denki kissed his cheek, and when they held hands, and he liked to nuzzle into Denki's side, but, well, he did that with the rest of his family too. But it felt different with Denki. And Izuku really liked the way it felt. And now he was going to have to separate for a week since Papa was going to be spending the week doing a very intense training regimen with Denki, and Izuku was going to be in Hosu with Toshi and Shoyuta doing a heavy patrol in the city. Zuzu, Denki said as he toyed with one of Izuku's curls, promise me you'll be safe? Izuku nodded. I'm mostly going to be just the eyes in the sky, Izuku promised. I'll only engage if someone's life is in direct danger. I mean, I finally got myself a boyfriend, I really don't want to lose you already, Denki said with a wink. Izuku took Denki's hand in his and nuzzled it against his cheek while blushing. Same here, I really like this, what we have right now. And don't worry, I was a vigilante for years, I know how to stay safe. Denki snorted. You know staying safe is the exact opposite of vigilantism, right? You sound like Shoyuta, Izuku giggled. I swear, Denki, I'll be back in one piece at the end of this week. But you have to promise me you won't let yourself get distracted worrying about me, and learn everything Zashi has to teach you, okay? I promise, Zuzu. I'll have a lot more control over my quirk when you get back home. Oh, there's this rom-com that just came out, when internships are over, let's go catch a movie together? And maybe dinner afterwards? Izuku nodded. Yeah, I'd like that. Once everyone had arrived at the station, Shoyuta made sure everyone had their costume cases, were told to be on their best behaviors, and then told they would have a month of detention if he heard they were less than perfect while with their mentors. After Shoyuta was sure everyone knew he was serious, he made sure Hitoshi, Izuku, and Ida followed him to the train to Hosu. Denki didn't get on a train, he didn't need to. Mike-sensei said the facilities at his agency would be the best if he was working with a sound or voice-based quirk, but as Denki's quirk wasn't sound or voice-based, they would be working primarily at the UA facilities. Denki was sure that Aizu would never steer him wrong, so he was trusting that Mike-sensei really was the best person to go, and that his suggestion wasn't just because Mike-sensei was his second dad. And man, what a trip that was to find out. He had known that Aizawa-sensei was the hero he was living with, and that Hitoshi was his brother, so by default that Aizawa-sensei was Hitoshi's dad, but never in a million years would Denki have ever thought that Mike-sensei was married to Aizawa-sensei. But it sorta made sense? Kaminari, glad you made it? Mike-sensei called out to him, startling Denki out of his thoughts. I'm really glad you picked me, honestly. I know there were a lot of other heroes you could have chosen, and I'm sure you had your reservations, but I'm sure we can get you to a good place by the time this week is up. I hope so too. Aiza kept saying nothing but good things about you and that I'll learn a lot from you, Denki grinned at Mike-sensei. You've got a lot to live up to, Mike-sensei. Yeah. Let's get this party started. Mike-sensei gestured for Denki to follow him, and they reached one of the gyms. Mike-sensei brought Denki to what looked like a battery hookup. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk to you about is this. Why are you so obsessed with how many volts you can produce? Well, more volts equal more power, right? Denki answered hesitantly. That's what my quirk counselor said anyways. Mike-sensei pinched the bridge of his nose in a manner very similar to Aizawa-sensei, and Denki wasn't sure who got the habit from who. So, I need to get Nedzu to investigate a quirk counselor for incompetence, huh? Okay, he muttered. Louder, he said, no, volts are going to be pretty useless to you. They don't actually measure power, but rather the difference in charge that compels electrical energy to move from one place to another. Basically, it's a measure of how far electricity can go, as well as its likelihood to arc. As you are not a power line and arcing is generally a bad thing for you, as it sends your electricity into the ground, where it is essentially wasted, you don't need to have a particularly high voltage. You would actually benefit from having a far lower one. Denki's eyes were as wide as saucers. That's totally not what I've been taught. Yeah, that seems a bit obvious now, Mike-sensei winced. I'm going to be giving you a few books on electricity that I want you to read, but you can do that after training is done for the day. Think of it as a bit of supplemental reading for what we're going to be going over this week. Denki nodded, not quite happy about having to do some extra reading, but okay with it if it'll help him be a better hero. Okay, now continuing with the problem of how many volts you use, the 1 million volts you use in your indiscriminate shock is overkill. Like, most power outlets use 240, and some countries even have that as too high of an arcing risk and use 120 volts as their standards. And have you ever seen what an average power line can do to a person? Spoiler, it's not pretty. So do us all a favor, don't use that million-plus voltage thing again, you dig? Yeah, Denki whispered. Should I be writing this all down? Nah, it'll all be in the books I give you, with a lot more detail. Mike-sensei put his hand on Denki's head. One of the main things I want to work on with you this week is minimizing your arcing. Yes, it looks super flashy, the media will love it, and you will be a walking fire hazard. Please, please, please do not become a walking fire hazard. The only time I want to see you arcing is when you are just about to touch something with your new gloves. It won't look as cool, but it will be so much safer to other people, and it will reduce your casualties and potential property damage. So, promise me, yeah? You're going to lower your voltage and no more of this indiscriminate shock nonsense. Yeah, Denki rubbed the back of his neck. Aizu already told me to stop using it because it made me short-circuit too much, so don't worry about that one. Good. Mike-sensei scratched at his nose for a second, trying to figure out how to phrase the next part. While volts are practically useless for you, what you do need to practice with is your amperage, as that's the measure of the amount of electrical energy being moved at any one time. It is, in essence, the thing that makes electricity so dangerous. It's what you will need to learn to control so as to effectively incapacitate your opponents without killing them. You'll want to keep your amperage fairly low, as you want to be a taser and not an electric chair. Mike-sensei gave him a sad smile. While you will inevitably lose control at some point in your career and kill someone, I really don't want it to be while you're still a student. You have a really strong quirk, and those of us with strong quirks have to keep this in mind. Accidents happen. So, keep to the lowest power setting you can manage, and gradually increase your power if it's really needed. Denki's eyes lit up with understanding. I really don't want to kill anyone. No one does, Kaminari, Mike-sensei said calmly. But with a quirk as powerful as yours, it's an inevitability. Hopefully not for many years, and learning this control now will keep that inevitability at bay for a long time. Mike-sensei looked at him with understanding. Did you know I'm nearly completely deaf? He asked. Denki looked at him with confusion, not understanding the topic change, but rolling with it nonetheless. No. Mike-sensei nodded and shifted his headphones. Yeah, I have hearing aids that are covered up by my headphones. My quirk is really powerful, and my body doesn't have any natural protection from the sheer volume I can produce. Sound waves are really freaking powerful and super dangerous. I'm sure you heard about what Izuku did to the Nomu at the USJ, right? Denki nodded. While he had been short-circuited for the latter half of the ordeal and didn't actually see what he did, he had been told all about it by Mina, who had watched it all go down. Sound waves. I can do that too, but I hurt myself and anyone who happens to be in the area, so I developed other techniques that are just as effective, but a lot safer, while using that overwhelmingly powerful attack as a last-ditch move. If I used it all the time, I'd have a massive casualty count and my property damage would be in the billions. Mike-sensei continued, electricity, also, is stupidly freaking dangerous, Kaminari. There are so many things that can go wrong with attacking someone with an electrical attack that you might want to think about if you want to attack directly at all, or just use that as a backup, a last-ditch move, if you will. I've seen you charging cell phones by sticking the charging cable in your mouth. You could do something similar with support gear, having a weapon that is useless in the hands of anyone else, but you could use your electricity to power it. Now, I'm not saying that using support gear is inherently better than attacking physically. They both have their pros and cons. But it is a choice that I feel you should seriously consider. This is especially important due to how much training you wasted trying to be a Pikachu and keeping a constant 240 volts at 30 to 50 amps in order to power support items is far easier to learn and execute than constantly adjusting your amperage while also keeping track of where you are striking so that you don't kill or permanently cripple your opponent. Mike-sensei paused, thinking, and then added on. Though, on the other hand, support items can break and that could be really bad in the middle of a fight, but that's why I'm going to make sure you can use your quirk safely, so if you do decide to go the route of support gear, you'll be able to continue fighting if your gear breaks. Mike-sensei clapped his hands. So, are you ready for some hands-on stuff now? Denki grinned brightly and nodded. He was really freaking glad he listened to Izuku and went with present Mike. This man knew what he was talking about.